It's a god-awful small affair to the girl with the mousy hair, but her mommy is yelling no, and her daddy has told her to go, but her friend is nowhere to be seen. Now she walks through her sunken dream to the seat with the clearest view, and she's hooked to the silver screen. But the film is a sad thing for she's lived it 10 times or more. She could spit in the eyes of fools if they ask her to focus on the same standing in the dance hall. Oh man, never knows give and go. It's a freaky show. Take a look at her. Oh man, beating up the wrong guy. Oh man, wonder if you'll ever know. Is there a message show? Is there life on Mars?
Who doesn't need a little David Bowie in their life? Am I right, Anthony?
I suppose there are people who only have the palate of a child and don't understand David Bowie, but yes, everyone should be into David Bowie.
That might be my top 3 favorite songs. Life on Mars, everybody. Life on Mars. Actually, it's the title because there's a question mark at the end. David Bowie in full regalia, being David Bowie. The many iterations thereof. The Tall White Duke, Ziggy Stardust, you name it.
Yeah.
He was one of a kind. There's people that have made a lot of comparisons, or should say that like Harry Styles is sort of the nowadays David Bowie. I'm like, yeah, no,
Um, yeah.
no,
What is stop trying to compare people to other people for 500, Alex? You can
yeah,
be
exactly,
influenced by people.
yeah. I mean, Harry Styles, pretty talented guy and very
Right,
eclectic and very
right.
comfortable in his own skin, but not David Bowie, not samesies.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody, and hello to you, sir. It's been a day. I want to just let people know I've had power go off and on like all day today. So who the hell knows what's going to happen at this point? But
Yeah.
don't nobody touch anything. Don't go near the water. Nobody touch anything. Thank you. Um,
And by the way, please note.
my friend, well done, well done. 5-2 currently, and if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. So there you go. That's what you
Yes.
get from Red Sox fans.
Right.
Every game matters, and if we're not watching the Red Sox, we're worried about what the Yankees are doing. Um, Thanks everybody for joining tonight. Really, really appreciate you all. Glad you're all here. Thank you for attending. Please like and share the live. Tap like crazy. Send it out to your favorite friends. I want to challenge everybody if you're in the chat, tap like crazy and copy that link and send it to 10 people that you know and love. 5 of your friends, 5 of your enemies. Let's put spam in the chat tonight. FJB, Donald Trump 2024. Let's try to fire up as much activity as we can this evening because there's a lot of topics that I want to cover off on. And just a couple things before we start. There is a brand spanking new merch store that been working with Whisper, who's been kind enough to help me get that set up. The link is in my bio. There's some cool stuff. There's going to be some more stuff that are being added. So if you're all interested, I think it's freaking wild that there's merch, but that's a whole nother conversation. If you like to support what we do, there's a gifting goal this evening. Please gift our panelists. There's also a link to Anthony's Cash App in my bio, and there's other ways to support the channel. If you guys like what we do, we appreciate that in advance. You're also kind. Currently 6 subscribers away from 100. All subscribers get custom emotes. So if you go to comment, that little star in the comment field, there's a few custom emotes that are in there based on the people that we get in the box. I think some of those really, really apply. So Thank you for that. Um, I wanted to kind of cover off on a couple things before we dive into our topics this evening. But um, Anthony, you recall a couple weeks back there was that rally in Ohio, and Trump referred to the bloodbath, and our friends
Yes.
on the right were trying to pivot away and saying that was strictly economics.
Yeah.
Well, that term, ironically enough, came up again just recently.
Hmm.
It was having to do with a rally in Michigan. Um, we'll get to Ruby Garcia in just one second because I think it's really important that we talk about what that case was about. But on a few occasions, Mr. Trump referred to the Biden border bloodbath. So I guess the question then to be asked is that an economic reference? Because I don't recall that being an economic reference. We covered off on that pretty significantly as to what we think that meant. And I know you took some historical context from that as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely nothing to support the absolutely insane right wing talking point that
Hmm.
this is about economics.
Yep, exactly,
So,
exactly.
you
And then
know,
he made a reference during that rally to um, an unfortunate loss of life. A young woman in Michigan, in Grand Rapids specifically, Ruby Garcia, we know, who was unalived by her domestic partner, and was an undocumented immigrant who was deported and then got his way back into the country, and then that became a talking point from the right. This
yeah,
conversation should be about domestic violence and how women are at the mercy of their domestic partners on so many cases and in so many examples, and there's so many protections for those that are committed and or convicted of domestic violence. That's what this case should be about. The fact that it's become this politicized event is typical from our friends on the right. And by the way, Mr. Trump during that rally said that he spoke to her family, and her family came out in full defense and say, "Yeah, no, that did
yeah,
not happen." So another lie that you've been told, MAGA. Um, Once again, allowing the words of your leader be the what you believe, ignoring the absolute truth as to what's happened. I just think that was despicable and disgusting. And as a reminder, domestic violence is what this case should have been about and
yes,
should always be about, no
yes,
matter who perpetrated the crime.
right.
Period.
Which also ties into our recent conversation about the importance of red flag laws and
Exactly.
why persons who are accused of DV should have temporarily their pew-pews taken
Correct.
until proven otherwise, and if convicted, should not be allowed to have pew-pews.
Correct. Exactly right. Exactly right. A couple things that I wanted to kind of just to cover off before we get into specifics of our topics tonight. It's been a bad week on the political front, and I should say on the prosecutorial front for the twice impeached, four-time indicted, sexually abusing fraudster. In New York, we know that the gag order has been revised. That trial starts in 10 days. I think the 15th is for jury selection. In Georgia, that the request by the Trump team to have that case dismissed on the grounds of free speech, that was denied.
Yeah.
And also in Florida. So Aileen Cannon has found herself in a bit of a predicament. And I want to talk about this a little bit. So she did rule that she dismissed the claim that the Trump team made that this case, that he believed the case should be dismissed because he's covered under the Presidential Records Act, which I think is interesting. I'll get into the interesting part about that in just a second. Well, the whole thing is interesting. But if you think about this, the claim that Trump has made is not that he didn't have these documents, right? It's that he was allowed to have them under the Presidential Records Act. So, because I care about y'all, and I think it's important that we have these conversations because the data that we go through is really important. I pulled up the Presidential Records Act. It's PRA of 1978, USC 44 USC B2201 through 2209. Specifically, it talks about it establishes that presidential records automatically transfer into the legal custody of the archivist as soon as the president leaves office. Once again, establishes that presidential records automatically transfer into the legal custody of the archivist as soon as the president leaves office. In addition to the Presidential Records Act, there's a supporting document that talks about the definition of what a presidential record is. A presidential record, they are defined as, quote, documentary materials, or any reasonable segregable portion thereof created or received by the president, the president's immediate staff, or a unit or individual of the executive office of the president, whose function is to advise and assist the president in the course of conducting activities which relate to or have an effect upon the carrying out of the constitutional, statutory, or other official or ceremonial duties of the president. Game, set, match.
Yep.
The ironic part about this whole situation, and the reason that the judge threw this out, dismissed this piece, is because, first of all, Jack Smith did not indict him in violation of the PRA. The PRA is strictly a civil penalty. It's not criminal. And because of that, she ruled that you're making a claim. You're asking me to dismiss something that I can't dismiss because you're not being charged for it. But she left the door open that they could still use that as a defense. The twisted part about this, where she might have gotten herself into some serious trouble, is that we talked about this a couple weeks ago, is that
Yep.
she asked both the defense and the prosecution, so the Trump team and the government in this case, to come up with defenses and or jury questions, jury instructions for the jury in the event as it relates specifically to the PRA. Basically, what she's saying is, jury, is the Earth square or flat? Meaning that the questions that she's asking them to answer do not apply because the PRA is not even in the indictment.
Right.
So I wonder if she is pushing this as far as she can to have the 11th Circuit come in and remove her from the case so that she can go back to the Trump team and say, look, I did everything I can for you. Remember that when you're picking your next Supreme Court justice. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, every step of the way, and I've been following along and watching other attorneys talk about this, and some experts on the box saying she has gone right up to the line of recusal, but not necessarily enough to get her removed. But some of the language that she used in response to Jack Smith's brief, I think were interesting. One in particular that really stood out to me, and I just want to read it real quick. She said, and it's kind of pushing the limits. She said, the court declines that demand as unprecedented and unjust, meaning that she asked Jack Smith to come up with these crazy scenarios, and Jack Smith's like, no, because we're not even talking about the PRA. We're not even indicting him for this. And she's using language like the court declines that demand as unprecedented and unjust. I don't know if that's outside of the bounds of legal speak between judges and between attorneys, but I think there's little cookie crumbs here that say this might get us to a point. Yes, she was appointed by Trump. Might get us to the point where the 11th Circuit steps in. So thank you for letting me digress there. That was just that really interesting. Really interesting.
It's very interesting, right? I mean,
yeah. She was, yes, appointed by Trump. As it sits right now, there is no trial date set in stone. I think that trial, the reason there's so much push from the Trump team on this one is because that is a slam dunk case. Because reminder, it's obstruction of justice and violation of the Espionage Act. You obstructed justice to hide the fact that you had NDI information. When you were in the Navy, Anthony, you were in the habit of just taking NDI information home with you, right?
As I've shared before, twice I was given a temporary increase in security level so I could participate at the table while discussing something that I had to participate in because I was at the wheel, as it were. I was able to take notes on my assignment. What time was I to be somewhere? Who was to be there, so I could make sure everyone was there before departing. And that was it.
Pretty much, right? That was about it.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, the information was not shown to me. Like, what people were holding in their hand. It was never placed upon the table for my review. And as soon as I was assigned, I was dismissed.
Right.
Right.
And
So,
what's the rule? And what's the rule about submarines?
what are submarines? I don't even know if we have submarines.
Thank you. Enough said. Okay. So we want to touch on a couple of things tonight. Obviously, different backgrounds behind us, and we want to touch on both topics. It seems very clear to me at this point that the entire Republican agenda is based on hate speech and political violence, and we've seen a significant increase in political violence. Anthony was talking about it the other day. I pulled some data from the Southern Poverty Law Council, which is a great organization. They track these kinds of things. And in particular, they identify a lot of, we'll call them hate groups as they classify them. And some of the names that we know, Proud Boys, they're tracked in there, and there's others. And the reason that I think it's so important is because I don't think we discuss enough what defines a hate group. So this is their definition. The FBI uses similar criteria, but the definition is this: an entity that has a process through which followers identify themselves as being part of the group. This may involve donating, paying membership dues, or participating in activities such as meetings and rallies. Individual chapters of a larger organization are each counted separately because the number indicates reach in organizing activity. The definition is an organization or collection of individuals that, based on its official statements or principles, the statements of its leaders or its activities, has beliefs or practices that attack or malign an entire class of people, typically for their immutable characteristics. An organization does not need to have engaged in criminal conduct or have followed their speech with actual unlawful action to be labeled a hate group. We do not list individuals as hate groups, only organizations. Hate groups vilify others because of their race, their religion, their ethnicity, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Prejudices that strike at the heart of our democratic values and fracture society along its most fragile fault lines. So a lot of the names that we know, we've heard about it all, but there's so many groups that are fringe groups that cross the line between what is considered, freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and what are actual hate crimes and hate groups. And again, if you read the definition, and this definition tracks with what the FBI classifies it as, remember, an organization does not need to have engaged in criminal conduct or have followed their speech with actual unlawful action to be labeled a hate group. We do not list individuals as hate groups, only organizations. So we'll be touching on that throughout the night. And that brings me back to another conviction for January 6th. James Jonakis was sentenced to 6 years in prison. I'm sorry, 7 years in prison. He was, let's see, he played a leadership role during the January 6th attack. He led other rioters on a charge against the police line, barked commands over his megaphone, and shouted step-by-step directions for overpowering officers. In an angry mob, there are leaders. This is a quote from the judge. In an angry mob, there are leaders and there are followers. Mr. Janatakis was a leader. He knew what he was doing. The judge before sentencing him to 7 years and 3 months behind bars. Janatakis, who represented himself with an attorney on standby, has repeatedly expressed rhetoric that appears to be inspired by the anti-government sovereign citizen movement. He asked the judge questions at his sentencing, including, "Does the record reflect that I repent my sins?" Lamberth, the judge, who referred to some of Janakis' words as gobbledygook, said, "I'm not answering your questions here." Prosecutors recommended a 9-year sentence. Janatakis, a self-employed installer of septic systems, so the shit literally hit the fan for him. Janatakis was not just any rioter. He led, organized, and encouraged the assault of police officers at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. He was convicted of felony counts. A jury convicted him last year. He was sentenced yesterday. So, MAGA, you guys continue to tell us that there was no violence that day and officers weren't hurt. And then that leads into what Anthony has behind his head, because I firmly believe that anybody still supports Donald Trump at this point, after everything we know, is a traitor. Anything on your mind on that, sir?
Yeah, just a couple of things.
Please. Thank you for letting me spew there. I appreciate it.
No, that was great. People will start to chirp about how the Southern Poverty Law Center is a liberal group, which is false. It is not. It is just a purveyor of facts and data.
Correct.
It correlates the data based off of arrests, known intelligence, shared information from law enforcement with them, and they produce it. And they have been doing so since the 70s. The fact that you haven't been paying attention or weren't alive long enough to have paid attention since their founding, that's a you problem.
Mhm.
Also, the sovereign citizen movement, I'm going to make a statement here. I have never seen a more ridiculous sack of potatoes other than people that claim to be sovereign citizens. It's really hilarious, right? And I say potatoes specifically because it reminds me of a state, the Idaho, Uaho, no Uraho, Idaho,
Right.
is the one state that has the highest concentration of Christian nationalists, white supremacists, racist, bigots, and sovereign citizens in the entire United States,
Right.
because they all moved there to form this mecca in the 70s. Coincidence? I think not. But anyway,
On that
uh,
topic,
yeah,
the Southern Poverty Law Council has been tracking roughly 1,500 hard right extremist groups, and they've
yeah.
been more or less the same. So there hasn't been a creation of too many more groups, but an increase in membership by about 25% since 2016. Coincidence? I don't think so. Yeah. So again, the we see it. We have so many examples of what's happening, which is part of the reason that the gag order had to be expanded, because
Ugh.
the former president of the United States is going after the judge's daughter, and we've seen what happens. We remember that woman from Texas who made threats against Judge Chutkan in D.C., left a message on her voicemail, which is really smart, saying that she would literally unalive her by removing a particular body part. This is what we see. This is what's happened. And for those of you who are still apologizing it's not protected under free speech. It is not. When it comes to the point where when words become action, and that's what's happened here. And it is disturbing. Absolutely disturbing.
Yep.
I asked Dave to come up because there was a decision made today in regards to a potential thing that Attorney General James is going District AG James is going to use. Sorry, let me start again. There is a motion specific to the $175 million bond that may be outside of the scope of what's allowed in New York. And Dave requested, and I asked him if he wouldn't mind, if he found any information, sharing it with us. So we'll pivot for just a second. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, friends.
How are you?
I'm okay. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good. Thank you. We're just talking hate speech. Oh, just a fun topic.
I was listening because, that's the topic of the day, week, month, and year.
And it needs to be.
Unfortunately, it does.
So I reached out to Dave because I probably jumbled that up, but I had seen something come across the wire where there was a potential question as to whether or not that it was viable under New York law that the bond company was either registered and or able to do business in New York, if I read that right.
So this is a jumble. This is a jumble because I'm getting different.
Brother, I appreciate
No,
that.
not a problem. I'm reading. I've read a couple of articles on it. This is not my specific, very area of expertise. So I was looking around, and there are different kind of stories, and it could be any number of things. First of all, it was rejected. On Monday night. What is it? Night Insurance, whatever they're called, Night Specialty Insurance Company, issued a surety bond for $175 million, guaranteeing the $175 million as was ordered by the court. Along with doing this, you also have to issue documents. See, here's the way it works. There are bond companies that are licensed in New York. These companies are trusted by New York under New York insurance law because this is essentially insurance.
Right.
You're paying you're paying somebody to ensure that in the event that something happens, someone gets paid. So it's insurance. Now, Trump could not find a New York company that would insure him. Surprise, surprise. So he found this Knight Specialty Insurance Company, which is owned by a guy who, by a lot of accounts, is a bit of a slimeball. But here's the thing: it's out of California. So it seems to me that if it's if it's not insured in New York outside of just posting, putting up the bond, you also have to demonstrate through some sort of a filing that the bond is there. See, it's not like this. It's not like this company takes $175 million and puts it into an account. A bonding company says, I have the money. I know I have the money. So I'm pledging that if this happens, we'll pay you the money. It's a pledge. It's not actual cash. And for this pledge, whoever is getting the pledge, in this case Trump, has to pay them usually 10, 15, 20% plus interest, whatever they got to do. Well, they didn't do that, you see. They did not submit the proper documents, specifically financial statements, that...
So the bond company didn't submit the proper paperwork, is what you're saying?
The bond, seemingly yes. I've heard two stories, that the bond company didn't do it or that Trump himself didn't do it. And I'm not sure which one is which. So either way, it's not a good look. If the bond company didn't do it and they have to do it, then this guy, the owner of the company and the company itself is putting their reputation and also, the possibility of putting in a false document. That's perjury. If Trump has to do it, well, fuck. If I'm representing Trump, I don't think I would ever put anything into court regarding the truth of a statement, because I'm putting my license on the line, and Trump sure as fuck would be putting, the possibility of a perjury charge on the line if he did it. So that's the story. And A.G. James came out and said, we're contesting this.
So
now,
okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now all in theory they have to do is prove to the the Department of whatever agency it is in New York State that covers insurance companies, they have to prove that they have the money. Whether they do or not, we don't know. But as of now, he still hasn't posted it. His bond has not been posted.
Because it's in litigation, so to speak.
It's not litigation. You were saying that a motion was filed. A motion was not filed. It was simply rejected by the court because the documents were insufficient.
Gotcha.
A.G. James made a statement that she's contesting whether this could be a good thing or bad thing, but I don't think any motion papers have been filed yet.
Would that be a writ of mandamus?
No, it wouldn't be a writ of mandamus. I'm not sure what it would be.
Look at me with all this legal speak I've learned from you.
No,
seriously.
I'm
dangerous.
A writ of mandamus is one of the oldest writs. It is not the oldest writ, which is a writ of habeas corpus, but a writ of mandamus happens when somebody goes to court and says, look, court, this official agency, this government agency, or this government agent either is doing something they should not do or is not doing something they should do. And therefore, court, you need to order them to do or not do that thing. The best example of this is the most important case in U.S. Supreme Court history, Marbury v. Madison, because that case was about Mr. Marbury, who was promised, or he was supposed to get an official position, maybe a judgeship, and the new president, Madison, refused to issue it.
Okay.
So Marbury went to the court and asked for a writ of mandamus to force Madison to issue whatever the documents were to get him that position, which he was appointed to by the prior administration.
Got it.
And it's from that opinion that the Supreme Court vested itself with the power to interpret laws and to interpret whether they're constitutional.
So the fact that there's no action that can be taken. So Tish James can't be going after property until this is resolved. Now,
not necessarily. From a technical perspective, she can go after it once 10 days elapses. She can go after it immediately in 10 days, maybe Friday. I don't remember when the first department issued that.
Hmm.
But whether she will or not is a question. I mean, look, she's busy enough as it is, and
Sure.
to start a process which could take a month, could take 2 months, when he could just fix this problem within a day or two, would be a waste of everybody's time.
Okay.
That,
So all right. So the open question basically is, if I heard you correctly, is whether or not this insurance company has one of two things. First of all, that they're able to do business in New York, and they have the finances to back up their claim.
It's the second part, not the first part. It's whether
Gotcha.
they have the finances to back up the surety bond that they're guaranteeing.
Okay. Is this
That's the big question.
gotcha? And this is what happens, I'm assuming, when bonds are submitted, that there has to go through a review. There has to be a normal protocol then would require the bond company, the issuer, to be licensed, registered, whatever the terminology is.
99% of the time, no, because 99% of the time you go to an established bond company that's
Gotcha.
licensed in New York that has all its certificates,
Gotcha.
whatever those certificates may be. And you just say, hey, I need a bond for whatever amount. And and if they say okay, they'll put up the bond. But Trump couldn't find a bond company in New York that had the cojones to do that, to guarantee. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't guarantee a lollipop from that guy.
Right.
So shit. So he had to find somebody, and this could have been the guy who owns this company might be one of his kind of friends.
That's what I've heard, actually.
I mean, he got the bond for the $80 million he got from a company that's owned by Chubb, because the guy who runs that company, Chubb, that old time insurance. Come on, don't. Get your. This is not facts after. This is not facts after dark. We can't go there.
Fair enough.
Right?
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
no
but
problem.
that guy that runs that that company that is under the Chubb umbrella was apparently somebody that worked for the Trump administration at one point. So that's how he got that bond, the $80 million.
Okay. Now you've made it clear, and I know that you don't work in criminal court, in federal court specifically.
This is state court, not federal court. But this is, again, I do family law. I know this stuff because I read about it, and I understand what I read because I'm a lawyer, and that's what we do. But this is not, I've never had to post a surety bond for anything. I've never had to do this. I've been in appellate court bunches of times, but on different issues.
Gotcha. I was going to ask you real quick about the revised gag order from Judge Merchan.
Oh, that, yes. I've read it.
Okay. So then, since this is criminal court, now I know that there were gag orders put by Judge Engoron during the civil fraud trial, but this is different, right? So the stakes are higher. So
the stakes are just as, no, not necessarily. The stakes are just as high. Contempt is contempt, whether it's civil court or criminal court. In fact, the statutes are the statutes are the same.
Okay.
But here's the thing. The gag order that Engoron put on stayed until the case was over. The case is over. Engoron made his decision. Done. It doesn't go on forever.
Got it.
Gag orders are very limited. The First Amendment is a big deal, obviously. So this one started, and then it was expanded to include relatives of the people that are a part of it outside of the judge. Interestingly enough, the gag order does not include the judge himself. If he wants to shit on the judge publicly or privately, the gag order does not stop him from doing that. But
And
he
DA
went after
Bragg
the judge's
too,
kid.
right? And DA Bragg as well. Those two, they were excluded.
I think he may have included Bragg.
I think it was Bragg's family, but not Bragg himself.
Maybe
I might have misread that, but because Trump went, I think Anthony's out his head because I think the reason that Merchan perhaps elevated this was because Trump
went after his
continues
daughter.
to go after his daughter. Exactly.
That's the reason he went after his daughter. Yeah.
So if you
originally it was for witness. Yes, originally it was for witnesses.
Right.
Any potential
jurors.
witnesses.
Right.
Potential. Well, that's a little different, but yeah, potential witnesses. Originally, that's what it was.
Okay.
But then Trump decided to test it by going after Merchan's daughter again.
Okay. So then, violation. You get a warning. What do? You get called into the principal's office?
That depends on the judge. That really depends on the judge. Some judges will drop the hammer on one violation. Some judges will not. Now, he didn't. I'm not sure he technically violated it because the expansion of the gag order was a reaction to Trump going after Merchan's daughter.
Right.
Merchan's daughter was I don't believe she was included the first time.
She wasn't.
So Merchan had to expand it.
Correct.
Well, the judge made some. You'll have to read what the judge said, but But in short, he was like, there's actually no purpose to allowing you to continue this.
Well,
Right.
that was the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is.
He just called him out on his bullshit, basically.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. But I mean, gag orders are incredibly rare. You have to understand.
So, from your perspective, as objectively as possible, Dave, do you feel like if he continues to make these statements publicly about the people that are protected by the gag order, that he would sit in a jail cell until trial?
So I can't. It's impossible to look at a question like that objectively.
Fair.
Technically, yeah, he should.
Okay.
It would be what is called a willful contempt of an order of the court. You know, I'll use child support because that's what I know. Not paying 1 penny of the child support that you owe is automatically considered contempt because you didn't follow a court order, even minimally. Willful contempt, it rises to willful contempt if the court determines that you were able to do it and you chose not to. There is no world under which Trump making a statement about a protected party in the gag order would not be willful contempt unless he pleads insanity.
Okay. Right.
So it would be, and the penalties for willful contempt are up to and including incarceration.
Got it.
Whether the now here's the thing. Whether the judge will do it is a different question because this is where you can't look at it unobjectively because the politics are huge. This is a candidate for the presidency of the United States. And we're not talking about RFK Jr. here either. We're talking about a major party's candidate here. So I'm sure that's on his mind.
Yeah, again, it defeats the purpose of our entire judicial system if we cannot preach to the rest of the world that we hold our people accountable under the law when we don't penalize the people no matter their stature.
I'm going to tell you this.
We know that white privilege exists. We know that people of influence. We know that
this is beyond white privilege. This is beyond any kind of this is beyond any kind of privilege that I could think of outside of Trump privilege. This is presidential privilege. I don't know what the fuck you call it.
Sure.
I would say that in the event that it happens, in the event that the judge is going to want to do this, actually jail him, he's going to have a conversation with the governor, the mayor. He's likely going to have the probably with the fucking police commissioner.
Secret Service.
And again, you shouldn't have to have that conversation to hold the motherfucker in account for failing to follow court orders. But I can't see him doing it any other way. It is going to be if he does it, he does it. I hope he does. I do. I hope that, because you know where he goes if he violates a court order? Do you know where you go?
Rikers.
Yes. You don't go to a prison, you go to a jail. And in New York City, we have one jail, and that's Rikers fucking Island.
That's where Weisselberg went, right? Didn't he go there?
That's where he went. Yeah, Weisselberg went there. Yeah. No, that is not a fun place to be.
That's crazy to think about. I'm sorry, Anthony, do you have any questions for Dave?
No, as soon as you said Rikers Island, my mind went to all the New York City movies.
Oh, well, Anthony, I've been to Rikers Island. None of those come close to the reality. The reality of Rikers Island is it is controlled chaos with a combination of some of the worst human beings you can imagine and some of the most vulnerable human beings you can imagine.
So thank you, Nikki.
Insane.
The initial bond was issued on 325. The 175, the 10-day clock started ticking on 325.
So he's got until tomorrow.
Yeah.
10 days. He's got until tomorrow.
So then does he have until tomorrow, or because there's a question about the validity of this bond company, does that get extended?
No, not automatically.
Interesting.
Court orders don't get, unless a court order says this will automatically extend, it does not automatically extend.
Okay.
It's not how it works. Court orders stay as they are unless they are modified by another court order, a superseding order.
Okay. Well, thanks for doing that work, brother. Really, really
No
appreciate
problem.
that. Really,
No,
really appreciate it.
no,
I'm sure
this is all fascinating. It's
it's just
fascinating that a
crazy.
guy. It's fascinating that a guy who has claimed that he is super duper rich can't come up with $500 million when he claims he is a billionaire multiple times over and has for years. It's crazy that there are probably a good 10 to 20% of the public of the 350 million people that live in this country who fucking will believe anything he says, no matter how often he lies to them.
Right.
It's incredible.
I guess the last question I have for you, and just to pivot real quick to Georgia, or to Florida, it seems like Aileen Cannon is literally putting her toes right up to the line that would force her to potentially be recused. With the options, the only way I could break this down was the options that she gave Jack Smith and to the Trump team in regards to jury questions, specifically around the PRA, where your two options are the earth is flat or the earth is square, meaning that none of them are viable. So aren't the instructions that the judge gives a jury based on the interpretation of the law? So if she's not interpreting the law, right, then how can she give proper instructions?
First of all, you don't give, I think I've had this conversation with you before or somebody, you don't set up jury instructions till the trial is over. That is unheard of, first of all.
Okay.
Because you have to know what the evidence is, and the judge should not know what evidence comes in and what evidence doesn't until the trial is over, until all evidentiary motions have been done, and then you instruct the jury. So it's an impossibility.
Okay.
Now, what I think she's doing now is walking back slowly, because I don't know if you heard, but today she denied the motion to dismiss based upon the fact that he's protected by the Presidential Records Act.
Yeah,
because we know he's not.
Right.
And
exactly.
the fact that it wasn't even a fucking order. It was just her instruction for these weird jury instructions, suggested jury instructions included the PRA. So I think she's trying to walk it back because she's just realized that she's crossed a line, and that comes with the fact that Jack Smith's responses to her instructions are basically bait. They are bait for her to issue an actual order, which will then be appealable, because I think that's what, in theory, Jack Smith's been waiting on. Now, he is the ultimate institutionalist. And he's not looking to fuck with the system. He understands, I have a judge who doesn't like me for this case. I will work within that unless something insane happens. And this is the insanity. And what he may do is just say, look, let the fucking chips fall where they may. I'm going to file my appeal, and the 11th Circuit's going to do what they're going to do. If they're going to keep this judge, I'll keep working. If they don't keep this judge, great.
And judges have a lot of power, so she could, in theory, dismiss this case at any point, couldn't she? But I think the ruling today was specifically pretrial, so meaning that she wouldn't dismiss it under the PRA clause pretrial. I think it was very interesting that she included pretrial, but she couldn't.
Pretrial means this: a motion to dismiss is exactly what it's a pretrial motion to dismiss before trial.
Right. I
don't need a trial. A motion to dismiss means there's no need for a trial because there are no issues of fact. The only issues are legal issues, and you're a judge. You're the arbiter of the law. You can make that decision.
Okay.
And his defense was, well, I'm completely covered because Presidential Records Act, which is nonsense, of course.
Right. We went through it earlier. Yeah.
Yeah. But she just admitted, yeah, it's nonsense. I can't do it here. I got to do it. I got to try to. No, I can't say that about a judge. While it feels like the game is up with her, like feels like, she's putting her finger on the scale. I can't say that until, until this shakes out.
Well, I'll say it. I mean, it seems like she's done everything. Well, to use a Vermont expression, considering we just got 2 feet of snow, it seems like she's way out over her skis, as they say.
I'll put it a different way. As far as I can say, her decisions have been wacky as fuck.
Okay.
That I can say. I do not understand them. I don't understand them.
Okay.
I don't understand them as they apply to, how the law works. I think I understand them as they apply to how her head works, how her brain works.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that massive breakdown, sir. Really, really
No
appreciate your
problem.
time. You can bill Anthony.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm doing this pro bono.
Appreciate you,
Or should
brother.
I
Thanks a
call it
lot.
pro funno? See you guys
Exactly.
later.
Thanks,
Bye
bud.
bye.
Bye. That's exceptional. Appreciate that. We'd love to have that kind of breakdown. So that sort of unpacks a lot. If anybody has any questions about that, I'm sure Dave's going to be listening. We can go back and pivot to it. But I do think it's just fascinating that we've got this separate set. So again, MAGA. If you continue to complain that you think it's a rigged system working against Trump, we will just continue to bring these kinds of things up. Because if my veteran friend here, if he walked out of the off of his ship with a document he wasn't supposed to have, he'd be in the brig or worse. So enough of that bullshit. Enough of that bullshit. All right, friends, please continue to tap and do the thing and like and share. And a reminder, there is a new merch store that's in the link in my bio. There's some cool shit in there. And I'll break the news. There's going to be some Converse Chuck Taylors coming soon. So if you're interested, just go check this shit out. There's more to come, but it's neat. Anywho. So Anthony, what is on your mind tonight, sir? I know that's this topic about the fact that there's people that still support this man, that are just lost, unredeemable, I think, as you say, or
Yeah,
irredeemable.
I mean, we have tried every way possible to present facts, right? And
literally.
we will even break down sources that they provide
Mhm.
and fact check them as we do every evening.
Mhm.
And yet they will pivot with, oh, well, that's a liberal organization. Or what live was I on? I was on Sun Live when the guy was like, well, who wrote it? Who wrote the article? What is
Right.
that person? It's like, they
Edited video or whatever it
right.
is.
They
Yeah.
they just they are just a bunch of petulant children,
Mm-hmm.
right? Who
Mhm.
cannot accept the fact that they've been duped.
Mhm.
Because they rode the "we are victims" train with Trump, and now for a lot of them, they're starting to probably do a little self-reflection, looking inward, going, man, I've been giving this guy money. Why does he keep asking for money if he's a billionaire, right? And there's that guy that does these TikTok shorts, and he used to be on the Colbert Report. I can't remember his name, but he'll go to rallies and ask questions, right?
Yeah. Jordan Klepper.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
people weren't able to say what the Civil War was about,
Mhm.
right? So, and then there was another one that our friend Political Mom showed where the cameraman actually did pan and show the crowd.
Right.
It was like 200 people, maybe 200 people.
I know.
Right?
I
So
know.
his bubble is getting really small because his people are fucking broke because they spent all of this money and
Mhm.
time invested in a con artist who basically is going to take all of the money out of the GOP, ruin all down ballots, and no matter what happens, he's just going to go back to, well, I don't want to go to jail, so I'm going to have to contest it. I'm going to have to push it. I'm going to have to, one of three things happens. He naturally just expires, like his time on this rock just ends from the stress. That's
Right.
one thing that happens.
Right.
Two, all of his supposed financial wizardry comes to an end, right? He gets fully exposed. The emperor has no clothes, right? The dude is flat broke. He
Indeed.
is broke.
Yep.
All of his properties are leveraged. He doesn't really own that much stuff.
Yep.
Right? And then the last thing that's going to happen, which I talked about, is there are going to be a ton of people who are going to be declaring medical bankruptcy and bankruptcy because they gave all of their money.
Second mortgages.
Second mortgages.
Houses. Yep.
Right? And I'm here for it.
Me too.
And I'm going to celebrate their bankruptcies because they didn't have to do that. You have to make a conscious decision to take a second mortgage out on a house. That's a really big thing to do,
Yep.
right? And you damn well better make sure that you've got enough income coming in for the next 10 to 20 years to pay that back, that, it's to make improvements on the property so that you can sell it for more money than you owe, right?
Yep.
And the last thing I'll say is, look, I'm not exactly as physically fit as I once was, but good frickin' moogly googly. The folks at these rallies, wow. Like, I want you all to think about it, MAGA. He's going to try to take away your access to health care.
Correct.
You're already broke. You're not going to be able to afford what Republicans want. And that is that you just simply expire so they don't have to pay for anything.
Correct.
It's really a shame. Oh, one last thing. The word entitlement
Thank you.
means I am entitled because I paid into it.
Meaning it's your fucking money.
That's right. I pay into unemployment insurance. I pay into Social Security. I pay into Medicare and Medicaid, and I pay into those things. Therefore, I am entitled to them.
Right.
I loan the government money through these programs to help fellow citizens so that when and if it's my turn, I can also reap the benefits of the money that's been borrowed from its citizens, right?
Right.
And all you have to do is read. And if you can't read, I'd be happy to print it out, show you where I printed it out from. We can meet in a park and we can sit down and read it together. I'll bring sandwiches. We can hang out. We can do whatever we want.
Love sandwiches.
I'm not judging you. I'm just trying to save your damn life, trying to save your bank account, trying to save your house, trying to save you from a life of ruin. I'm not telling you who to vote for. I'm not telling you what to believe, but you can't just believe the people that are within 6 feet of you, right? Again, the GOP is a man clinging to you, pissing on your leg, and trying to convince you that it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
It's currently not raining here in LA County, although it looks like it's about to. And sorry, I know you guys just got a whole bunch of snow, but you know what I'm saying.
I do. Yes, exactly. Very well said, sir. Very, very well said. I mean, we see it every single day. It's the assault on rights, 10 toes down, human rights above everything else. You guys know that about myself and Anthony. Absolutely. But for people to say that it's, again, the term entitlement, yes, we know what that means. The right likes to use it as if it's a handout. That's why they say it that way. It's an entitlement. No, it's not. It's our money. We pay into it. So imagine people, this is, again, MAGA, this affects you as much as you like to think that it doesn't. It affects you. You've been working. You've earned that money. They want to raise the retirement age. That is a cut to your benefits. That is a cut to your benefits. First of all, if anybody is just planning on their Social Security for your retirement, I wish you luck with that. I mean, I really wish you luck with that, but that's a different conversation. But to Anthony's point, it's yours. You've earned it, and they are ripping you off. Remember, the biggest recipients of handouts in our country are the richest among us and corporations through their tax cuts, through loopholes, through subsidies, you name it, they take advantage of it. And yet, for some reason, people who do that are smart business people. And yet a poor family taking advantage of a system that put them in the place to begin with are freeloaders. Make that make sense. Make that make sense. And that is what the Republican Party is. They will rip you off. They will steal your shoes. They'll push you out in the cold and say it was your fault.
And the largest recipients of government programs are white Southern families.
Indeed.
Which are wholly subsidized by states like California, which is the 4th largest economy in the world.
Correct.
And quit saying that we have budget problems. No, we don't. We're still a net balanced budget here in California. The federal government can't even do what we can do.
Correct.
right? And we give a ton of money away in corporate discounts so that people keep their businesses here.
Yep.
And we also spend a ton of money helping human beings. Can we be better? Yes. But again, our GDP is the fourth largest in the world. So I don't want to hear it, red states. California's just fine. And stop referring to a video that is horribly looped as someone is supposedly driving through San Francisco or Los Angeles. I've been to those quite often because I've lived in both. It's bullshit, right? And you can tell it's looped over and over again because you keep seeing the same tent. Every 6 tents is the same tent. That's how you know it's looped.
And as a reminder, one of the elements of Agenda 47, which is Trump's sort of Reader's Digest version of Project 2025, is to lock up, arrest houseless people. Yep. That would be arrest them. I'll say that again for those in the back. That would be arrest them. Violating your civil rights.
Yeah, which then gives you a criminal record.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. I mean, it's disgusting to think about that. And I'll remind again the oath-breaking traitors that call yourselves veterans. Your members of your brothers and sisters make up between 7 and 10% of the houseless population, which means they would be locked up too for just being houseless. I'm so sick and tired of blaming substance use disorder on people who are down on their luck. That substance use disorder is not a reason someone becomes homeless. They perhaps fall into substance use disorder when they become houseless, but it's not a cause. Give them the treatment they need. Universal health care, provide people treatment, provide safe needle sites, provide resources. That's how you fix the problem. Putting them in jail, arresting them, internment camps is not a solution. That is fascism. Right? Reminds me of 1930s Germany. Reminds me of what we did in our country to Japanese Americans during World War II. Internment camps. That's what it is. You cannot apologize it away. I did a video. We had someone up last week and he was trying to defend it. Well, no, he didn't say arrest. I played him the audio and he said, well, yeah, not really arrest. I'm like, it's his fucking words. I can play it again. It's a joke that you'll defend that. Houseless veterans are also houseless. So how would they know? Would they just go, okay, we're only going to lock up the people that have brown skin, black skin, that we think are immigrants, or we think they're junkies? Well, that guy might be a veteran, or that woman might be a veteran. We lost Anthony. So who the hell knows? But I'm so sick of this bullshit. Traitors, all of y'all. Exactly. That's what he wants. Hey, Cody.
Hey, Fax, how are you?
I'm good, buddy. What's going on?
Yeah. This is like the culmination of the GOP. This will be the Hail Mary pass that they're trying to do right now. And I would just continue to say that if you're still supporting MAGA at this point, I don't think you're ever gonna stop.
Nope.
But I would also, I like what you had to say, Anthony, about these videos. These I just call them essentially trauma videos, where they go to like a small, and also I would also encourage people who watch these videos of this like, oh, look at all the houseless. Oh, look at all the houseless. It's one or two streets, right? So like the idea that you see a video of like two streets where there might be people camping out and stuff, and you think that's indicative of an entire city, really shows you the trick of social media, right? The trick of video editing, the trick of a narrative, right? So I would just encourage people to, just take in mind how large cities are, because it's a really it's really just disingenuous. It's like the same thing when you watch videos out of context and stuff. You can do a lot of tricks as far as video editing and stuff like that, and paint whatever narrative you want, right? So that's about it. Yeah. And also, I'm tired of calling them Christian nationalists because they are fascist. They are
Indeed.
fascist.
They're
And
both.
Trump, and I'll paint it for you really, really quickly, just because if we're going to do the Christian nationalism, the stuff that Donald Trump is now talking about doing,
Mhm.
right? That's putting one religion above everyone else, anything else here in America. So if they install a national religion, and what Christian nationalists want are people in the government that only have this worldview, that they think they have to have a biblical worldview in order to run the government, right? So that's not America anymore. That's not freedom anymore.
Nope.
That's straight up fascism. So
Yep.
please, please stop supporting Donald Trump. I don't know. I don't know how else to say it.
The first words in the First Amendment of the Bill of Rights, we know what it says. We talk about it all the time. It's the Establishment Clause. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. The first words in the First Amendment.
Yep.
So
Free exercise and establishment clause. Pretty
correct.
cool. Pretty cool stuff. You know, it doesn't make any, and that's the other thing with Christian nationalists is that they try to cloud that line right there. They try to suggest that, oh, well, no, they actually wanted to do a religion, but they just like never got around to it, or they'll point to some letter that Washington wrote to the Danbury Baptists. And again, they left England to come over here to get away from the church. So it's quite absurd to me. And also, and that's all, and you would also have to have every founder actually be like a Christian. They were more, I think it was is it theist? Is that correct?
Deists.
Deist. I said theist. Darn it. But yeah, it's just, it's absurd. But yeah, Donald Trump will continue to go harder and harder with the Christian nationalism. And if you don't believe me, watch him at the Christian Broadcasting Network. He did a speech in front of them. He told all those people, he's like, if I win, I will give y'all more power.
You are the company you keep.
Yep. These are the same people that are out in the Midwest passing laws, passing like just biblical law at this point, right? Just being like,
Right.
no. It's my worldview or else.
Seven Mountain bullshit. Yep.
Yeah, dominionist.
Exactly.
Post charismatic preacher stuff. Yeah, which was
Yep.
also always with the Republicans. Always
Right.
with the Republicans.
Thank you, brother.
What a-
Good to talk to you again.
Always a pleasure. Bye.
Be well. Thanks, Cody. Yeah, I mean, it's the scary shit, man. You know, we talk about this all the time, and it always reminds me. It comes right back to that the belief from the religious right that America is a Christian nation was never established as such. I could read it again. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Meaning, it's wide open. You can whatever the hell you want. That's the whole point, and that is the beauty. One of the beauties of the founding document of our country is that our forefathers were like, yeah, we can't have one religion being more important than another. That's not the society we want. Don't forget, they were running from religious persecution. It's one of the things they were running from. Give me a break. All right. I will bring up some guests. Thank you, friends. Please tap and share and like and do your thing. You want to support the channel? There's links in our bio, in my bio. We really appreciate it. And there's a gifting goal this evening. Thank you very much. Hey, Dana.
Hey, so you mentioned earlier about how Mega talks about not supporting, we're going to have to support these people. Well, there's such a stigma with going and using any kind of our social services like, SNAP or TAMP.
Mhm.
And I had two friends, they were husband and wife. Both were working for, back then it was like Wachovia Bank, and both making six-figure jobs, and they both got laid off. And the day after the wife got laid off, she found out she was pregnant. And we all of us friends were telling her, you've paid into the system, use the benefits. Her family was so upset with her that they told her she sold out because she had to use benefits. So I just wanted to share that real quick. There's such a stigma. We don't want to pay for people coming and that may need a little help getting started, but those that need it, we don't want them to be helped either. But, I'm held as a teacher, I'm held to the establishment clause.
Hmm. You
And
are.
um, I had a situation with a coworker who is from Nigeria, and he would consistently pray. And I, in our office, I had no problem with that. What I had a problem with was when he started bringing religious pamphlets to our school, and he was handing them out. And I told him, "You can't do that." And he got very, very angry with me. And he went and told an administrator, and I got written up, and he lied his way through it. And I was so angry. And then when I told the principal what was going on, she was like, she completely believed what I was saying. But, there are people in this country that do believe that religion needs to be in school. And, honestly, that's great if they want to take it as an elective, but we don't have time. Our kids are
Exactly.
they're so far behind in reading because we
Hmm.
don't teach reading
Hmm.
phonically. We teach it much differently than we did when you and I were growing up.
Right.
And, they're behind in math, they're behind in science. We need to be able to compete
I
in a
remember flashcards.
exactly. And we need to be able to compete in a global economy. And
That's
we
right.
have to then take these content areas that we teach these kids, and we have to intertwine technology to help them.
That's right.
And so, I will probably stop being a teacher if religion is put into public schools.
Well, that's
Um,
where it's headed because again, if you look at Project 2025 and parts of Agenda 47, they want to eliminate the public education system. They want to appoint teachers that are willing to teach patriotic based education, whatever the hell that is. And just something you said, Dana, reminds me because if you go back and look at the 14 tenets of fascism, they talk about identifications of enemies and or scapegoats as a unifying cause. An example would be people are rallied into a unifying patriotic frenzy over the need to eliminate a perceived common threat or foe, whether it be racial, ethnic, or religious minorities, liberals, communists, socialists, terrorists, etc.
yep.
So again, scapegoating, targeting people based on their beliefs, the color of their skin, in particular. That is a tenet of fascism. And throughout the evening, we're probably going to sprinkle in some more of those wonderful, wonderful traits and,
I I
and
was at
qualifiers.
I was at the gas station the other day, and I accidentally bumped into this guy as I was walking into the store, and he goes, "Excuse you?" And I said, "Oh, excuse me," because I bet you're a Democrat.
Oh man.
And it's like, just if you make a mistake or something, you're a Democrat, and it's you being used as an insult. And it's just so frustrating. And I watched a video the other day, and it was Lee Greenwood's, God Bless the USA.
Hmm.
And I have to tell you, that song used to bring me to tears
Sure.
because I was so proud of being an American. And for what that song said, and it would give me goosebumps, and it made me so proud. But
Hmm.
now it has been bastardized
Hmm.
by MAGA,
Hmm.
and I can't stand to listen to it now, and I even can be repulsed by the American flag.
Agreed.
So,
Sadly.
it is very sad. That's
Hmm.
all I wanted to share with y'all. I
Thank you, Dana.
love what y'all do, and have a
Appreciate you.
great night, okay?
You too. Thanks a lot, Dana. Bye.
Bye.
I'm glad you brought it up the way you did. And you and I have talked about this, Anthony. It's about the difference between people equate nationalism with patriotism. And that is a really, really dangerous recipe because you don't understand the differences. Again, a tenet of fascism, powerful and continuing nationalism. Fascist regimes tend to make constant use of patriotic mottos, MAGA, slogans, Make America Great Again, symbols, red hats, songs sung by the J6 prisoners, and other paraphernalia. For example, flags are seen everywhere, back of pickup trucks, painted on houses. Flags are seen everywhere, as are flag symbols on clothing and in public displays. Now, the 14 tenets of fascism have been around a lot longer than MAGA and Trumpism, but they can check every box. disdain for the recognition of human rights. Because of fear of enemies and the need for security, the people in fascist regimes are persuaded that human rights can be ignored in certain cases because of, quote, need. The people tend to look the other way or even approve of torture, summary executions, assassinations, long incarcerations of prisoners, etc. I want to make sure that we talk about these, but should do this really quickly. TikTok, it's our intention during these live broadcasts to only provide fact-based information to the absolute best of our ability. We strive to never spread misinformation or to platform those that do. Opinions of our guests or commenters are theirs and theirs alone and do not reflect those of the hosts. Hate speech is not allowed, and we are diligent about policing it. This platform is for educational purposes only. Anything else on the TikTok shop, Anthony? You're muted. No, I think you're muted. Hold on. I got you. There you go. You're back. You're back.
Okay.
I got you. Yep. We got you.
It's been very glitchy this evening because normally I just mute the microphone and it.
I know.
Right?
It's all good. Anyway, you love the TikTok shop.
I love the TikTok shop. Also, my wife does say hello.
Excellent. Excellent. I'll bring up Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Stephanie? Hello, Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie. Can you hear us? Stephanie, do you want to, we'll drop you down. You can request and come back up again. Doesn't look like you're able to connect.
One red bar. That's never a good sign.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Request again,
Sorry.
Stephanie. We heard you that time. Please request again.
The freaking irony, right?
I know, right? Exactly. So let's go. I want to go back to this list again because I think it's important because we continue to talk about these things. So we talked about the disdain for recognition of human rights. We talked about powerful and continuing nationalism, MAGA. There's a difference between patriotism and nationalism. Like I cheer on the USA when they're in the Olympics, but I don't drive around with slogans and statements on vehicles touting America first. And speaking of that, I think I would like to take a moment to remind people about some religious context or some historical context. So when people say America first, and people say, why is it such a bad thing to think about America first? Let's talk about the origin of America first. Anybody recognize that? People in that crowd, you think those people care about the rights of human rights? You think they care about the rights of minorities? You think they care about the rights of women, members of the BIPOC community, anybody but themselves? Christian nationalism. See what that says right there? America first. Yeah. Kind of tough, huh? History has a way of repeating itself if you're not careful. Hi, Stephanie, you're back. I guess not. We tried. Stephanie? No. Okay. All right. I'll bring up Poe. Hello.
Good to see you.
You as well? How's it going?
It's going well. Business has been crazy, and I got a new employee, and I don't know what he's doing, but he must be selling something illegal with my pins because they're flying, and I'm having trouble keeping up.
Good problem to have, I guess.
I guess I just feel like a studio. I'm strapped to my studio these days. But anyway, I was thinking for a couple of days. I was thinking, what is the most important single quality, if you could tamp it down to one, that a president has to have to be a good president?
I think it's character, quite frankly.
What about you, Anthony? What do you think?
My favorite old school word, scruples.
Scruples. I thought that at first too, but we've had many presidents that have had questionable scruples. Bill Clinton, for one. So I decided that for me, the idea is that the most important quality that a president needs to have is he needs to be a really great decision maker. And because he's the one that appoints somebody at the head of every cabinet, he's the one that makes crucial decisions every day to drive the economy, to who to appoint for the Treasury. I mean, everything comes down to, is this person a good decision maker? And then I tried to think, well, what good decision has Trump ever made in his whole entire life? And I
Mm.
honestly could not come up with a good decision he has ever made.
It's a good point. I think some of the things you identified there are leadership competencies, right? So being able to so good leaders surround themselves with really good people. So,
Right.
if you look at it from, again, because I'm a political science guy, a political science nerd, there is no more qualified staff that we've ever seen before in the White House. The Biden Harris
No.
administration has the absolute most qualified, most professional, most experienced cabinet staff potentially in American political history. And that's what good leaders do. They
Yeah.
surround themselves with really good people. And I want to add, I said character, and I still think that's a big one, but I want to add accountability. I want to add a person. I think that's a good human trait in general. Can you be accountable for the mistake that you make?
Yeah.
An example, when during the State of the Union, when Joe Biden referred to an undocumented migrant as illegal, so should not have said it. I called him out on it immediately when I saw it. The next day, he corrected it. I should not have said that, and I apologize.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Right. And good leadership, you're correct. Like I thought that the the coach of the Seahawks was an amazing leader, because even when his team lost, like, and some single player had made a big mistake,
Mhm.
when he came out, he stood in front of those players and took responsibility for the mistakes,
Mhm.
and laid it on himself, not the players. So the opposite happens with Donald Trump, where he blames everybody else for mistakes that he obviously is the one that made.
Absolutely.
But he's made bad decisions at every turn, to take the documents out of the White House, to call Georgia and try and flip the election, to lie about the election results, to blame his own administration officials for different problems that occurred. Like in every other case, it always falls back on the leader. It falls back on Joe Biden. Everything falls back on Joe Biden, according to the right, and nothing falls back on Trump,
Of
according
course.
to the right. It's like such a double standard and so weird. It's
Well,
just
yeah.
so
I mean,
weird.
it's past the double standard, Poe. It's a cult. I mean, that's why you see it that way. I mean, again, we can talk about rampant sexism, supremacy of the military, obsession with national security, religion and government intertwined, corporate power protected, labor power suppressed. These are all the tenets of fascism that is MAGA. That is the Trump era in our
Yeah,
political system.
absolutely. Absolutely. Every single one,
Disdain
they're
for
hitting it.
yeah, disdain for intellectuals and the arts, liberal colleges, indoctrinations, obsession with crime and punishment. We're going to lock up our houseless people, rampant cronyism and corruption, fraudulent elections. They check every single box on that list.
Every single
Every
one.
box. And
Absolutely
and
right.
that's what we tell people when first of all, when the left likes to say when the right likes to say that the left is fascist. First of all, fascism is a far right political ideology. It's a far right
Oh yeah.
autocratic. So
Yeah.
I go down that list. I've been again. I go to MAGA Live, so you don't have to. You're welcome. Don't do it for your mental health. I got you. I'll go through that list and I'll say, you give me an example of something that the left does this, and I get halfway through the list and they kick me because they don't like to
Yeah.
be called out on it. That's the
Yeah.
point. That's the point.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy. It's like the policies that Reagan installed have brought us to the point where nobody trusts the government,
Yep.
because the government has been working, for Citizens United forever, where companies have more power than the people. And we know that it's driven us to this point where, we're all working constantly and not getting ahead. And yet they want to dismantle the government, but they think that the best way to do it is to take the greedy rich man who has no morals and put him at the top to fix everything. Like, holy
Mhm.
shit.
Mhm.
Where's your logic, MAGA? Where is uh
Logic.
how do you
Yeah.
come to that point? It's insane.
I've come around on this a little bit, Poe. I don't think Donald Trump is the threat. It's the people that are pushing him. It's the Christian nationalists that made up the Project 2025. It's the people like Stephen Miller. It's the people that are the Nick Fuentes, the YT supremacists of the world. They're the ones that are the threat because Trump is all they got to do is stroke his ego and he'll do whatever they say.
Well, yeah, he's a useful idiot, but
Correct.
that kind of gets him away from having responsibility for all the decisions. And I want to lay all the decisions on his lap where they
Yep.
belong,
I
because
agree.
he is the reason that my dad is dead. He is the reason that we were shut down for a year. He is the reason that we have the worst numbers for COVID. He is the reason that we almost had, like, economists were predicting a Great Depression before the pandemic. The pandemic actually saved Trump and gave him a good
Did.
thing to blame for the economic downturn that we had. But it was actually his policies before that were aiming us for not just a big recession, but the economists were predicting a possible Great Depression because of his policies.
Right.
And they ignore all of that. It's insane what they ignore and don't remember and don't grasp. And I just don't know how to get through to them. And it feels like we have 74 million at least terrorists in our country. That's what it feels like to me, because
right.
they're following a terrorist general and they don't mind. Did you see the front line on the rise of Putin in Russia? Did you see that?
No, I did not.
Oh man,
Add it to my list.
it was so good.
You said it was on Frontline?
It was on Frontline, and they covered the rise of Putin in Russia and the destruction of democracy, because democracy was rising in Russia before Putin took office.
Yeah, it was.
And it showed that he ran on a daily scandal every single day until everybody got exhausted trying to follow the scandals and just began to ignore it and live their own life. And
Right.
and that's what I feel like he's getting the pattern of how to do this from Putin, because it's a daily scandal with Trump. Every single day for 8 years now. It's been an insane amount, like water from a fire hose in your mouth, trying to absorb all the corruption and all the scandals and all the things that he says and the people that he threatens and the threats that are occurring all over our government. And yet they're all just like, it is to the point where I've been off TikTok for a couple months because I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, I just want to live my life. I want to make my art. I want to think about something else besides Donald Trump and how he's ruining my country. I want to do something else. And then I have to come back before the election because we can't get tired. We can take breaks,
Correct.
maybe, but we can't get tired and we can't give up and we can't stop. We've just got to keep beating the drum because
That's right.
we are on the cusp of going over the waterfall of a dictatorship
We
and
are.
a horrible country where tons of us lose our freedoms and tons of us lose our public schools and our systems, and our children can't walk down the street safely. It's not okay. It's not okay.
The chat reminded folks that the Frontline thing you're talking about is on Netflix, so people are interested. The Rise of Putin. So it's out
Yeah,
there
it's
on
the rise
Netflix.
of Putin, and you absolutely have to see it because it it's the playbook of Trump, and it's
Yep.
exact. And between the rise of Hitler and how that happened, and him following that pattern, and the rise of Putin and how that happened, I mean, it's worth broadcasting even on TikTok because it's
Not a bad
so
idea, actually.
similar. It's so similar. It's the same pattern, and it's so important that people understand what hole we are going down if we don't fight this corrupt piece of shit. Sorry.
Agreed. No, it's cool. Thank you, Poe. We appreciate you. Always appreciate your perspective. We got you, friend.
Thank you. Thanks
You
for
got it.
having me up.
Always. Have a good night.
Good night to you too.
Bye.
Bye.
The you know, history, we talk about this a lot, Anthony, about how the reason that we have to teach history is because it's necessary, because what happens if we don't teach it is it has a tendency to repeat itself. We use this imagery, trigger warning for people that are triggered by that picture, but I think it's really, really important. Now, on the face, because MAGA is afraid of history and they do not want history taught, on the face, they question the left as to why they say, you guys don't give a shit about America. Why shouldn't we have America first? Well, because everything has a meaning. There's always something behind it because words matter. Words matter. Now, this is part of our history. This hatred is part of our history. This vile, disgusting Christian nationalist, horrible chapter of our history is something that we need to know about and we need to talk about it. So again, trigger potentially. I'll apologize in advance, but we've heard the former president of the United States reference this all the time. He knows exactly where it comes from. Exactly where it comes from. Because the Christian nationalists that are around him and the fascist wannabes that are feeding him know exactly where it's coming from. This is what MAGA is, friends. This is what it is. It's now just a red hat, not a white hood. So, all right, we'll give Stephanie a shot again, see if she's got a better connection this time. Please like and share, everybody. Tap, tap, tap. Merch store is open. Link and tree in my bio. Gifting goal this evening. Thank you, new subscribers. Really, really appreciate you guys. There's a custom emotes for those that are subscribed. And I've seen some of them in the chat tonight. So thank you for using those, you guys. Really appreciate you. Thank you, Nadine.
Well,
Hi,
thank you for
Stephanie.
using those, you guys. Really appreciate
Oh, I don't think it's going to work tonight, Stephanie.
Oh,
I don't think it's
Okay.
going to work tonight.
We got you.
I'll watch and I'll come back.
No, we got you. You're good now.
I keep disappearing.
It's okay. We can hear you. Or I guess not. All right. Yeah, there's the custom emotes right there. They're cool, right? I did that myself. Hey, JD.
Hello. I thought I'd share a little bit of genealogy information.
Go for it.
Everybody's saying, we were a Christian country, blah, blah, blah. And that some were saying it was because they left England because it was not Christian enough. Actually, it was the fact that England requires you to be part of the Church of England. If you were not part of the Church of England, you could end up in prison. And in Virginia, I'm using Virginia just as an example. In Virginia, if you were
Hang
not
on one second, JD. Hang on one second. Cass Springer, please request. We want to talk to you. You think this is the Democratic Party? I want you to explain why. So Cass Springer, please request, and we'll talk.
Yep.
Sorry, JD.
In Virginia, before we were the United States, back when we were still colonies, if you were not married in the Church of England, your marriage was invalid. No matter if you came over from Spain, wherever, if you were in Virginia and your marriage was not in the Church of England, it was invalid.
That's interesting.
So, these folks that are hollering, they want us to be a Christian country and all that, and Christian nationalism, it could easily get to that again, that if we're only one certain religion, if you're not married in the proper church, it's not valid, and they can do whatever they want to you over it.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, we already know the assault on women's rights is just going to get worse. I mean, they'll be coming for marriage equality. They'll be coming for trans rights. They'll be coming for gay rights. They'll be coming for everybody. I mean, literally, that's it. And, we already know the assaults on marginalized communities in our country. White Christian nationalists do not want BIPOCs to even exist in our society.
And here's
they want to turn back the clock so far. It's just pitiful.
Yeah, and something else to think about with that is in that time when you had to be married in the Church of England, if your marriage is not recognized, that means any children of that marriage are not recognized as being legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not legitimate, you cannot legally inherit.
Right.
And that's another way for them to take your land.
Sure. Anything they can do. And they're doing it. And the people that are impacted the most by these policies and this rhetoric are the ones that are their full-throated support. That is the ultimate marketing.
Yeah.
P.T. Barnum, sucker born every minute.
Yep.
Thank you, JD. Appreciate you as always,
Sure,
friend.
thanks. Sure thing. Thanks for having me up.
You got it. Have a good night. Cass, you going to request, bro, so we can have that chat? Maybe you can explain history to me because I might have missed something, but I bet I didn't. Hi, Heather.
Hey, how's it going?
Very well. How are you?
I'm good. In the fascism note, I think one person isn't talked about enough, and that's Steve Bannon,
Oh, absolutely.
because he's basically been the puppet master behind Trump for most of this election, because
right.
his expertise is breaking up democracies.
Mm-hmm.
It's what
That's
he
a good
does.
call, which is exactly the point we were making earlier. It's not just Trump it's not just Trump as the threat. It's the people behind him, and Bannon's a big one. And he'll eventually
Bannon
be in
is
jail
a
like Peter
huge
Navarro.
one.
Yep.
So is Manafort and Stephen Miller.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't discount them either. And
Oh,
he's
yeah.
inviting Manafort back into his campaign.
I know. You're right. That's a good call out.
Yeah.
It's the fascist army, and he's lining them up, and they're unapologetic about it. They are unapologetic about it. Roger Stone.
Yeah.
You're right. Yep. Another one.
All of them.
Yeah.
Hannity. I mean, Fox News, Laura Ingraham. The way oh my God, the way those people talk, it just makes me ill. They're such puppets. It's
Fascists.
Yep. Ugh.
Yep.
I
right.
just don't know how they can look themselves in the mirror.
Because that's what they want, though. It's easy for them. That they believe that's the society. That's the society that they want.
How did we
they want
get
women
to
oppressed?
this?
Because it's always been.
I remember in the 70s, it was all about, the songs, the music was, the ink is black, the page is white, It was all about diversity and equity and inclusion and the earth and preserving the earth and everything. What the heck happened between the 70s and now?
Well, it's always been there, though, Heather. That's the problem. It's always been there. Anthony goes off on this, and I'm not going to steal his thunder, but our entire system has been built on it's systemic racism. Our entire country was founded on it. This goes back to the dawn of our country. I mean, this is nothing. This is nothing new. It's a matter of having the stars aligning. You get Trump in the White House. You have the Supreme Court justices pass away. You pack the court. You pass laws that take away rights away. This is what now it's again. That's the dog that caught the car. So now they're finding out that because our country is liberal, significantly liberal, much more liberal than the conservatives think. But their only way to fight back is to steal elections, suppress the vote, pack the courts, deny rights, suppress everything else. That's what they want. That's what they want. This is what they want. This is what they want.
Yeah. It's despicable.
It is. Got to keep fighting, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, vote.
Vote blue.
Up and down the ballot. I don't want to see any Republicans win in any offices. I think they need to be taught a lesson. Every one of them needs to be voted out, period.
And
they need to just start at the bottom.
I hear what you're saying. I don't believe in the uniparty mindset because I don't think that is. I think
just
that's
this election cycle.
That's I was going to say, but we need to fend off fascism right now. So yes, I hear you.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, just this election cycle because that's where they're all
Agreed.
Ganging up and trying to take over everything as we speak. So
agreed. Thank you, Heather.
Yeah,
I appreciate you.
Oh, no problem.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks.
You got it. Bye.
Bye.
I just don't think people see the danger. I really just don't think they see the danger. And I don't know what more we can do, but we're going to continue to talk about it. It's just so incredibly important. I mean, this topic we started tonight with political violence and hate speech, and we see it every single day. But it's the constant pivot from the right to defend it. No more of this ridiculousness about the bloodbath comment. First of all, you twisted the interpretation initially. If you generally think the former president of the United States, who's been talking about political violence and retribution and revenge meant it was only economic bloodbath? Give me a friggin' break. Do you think we're that dumb? We know you're that dumb. Do you think we are?
Yeah, I think that's what they're betting on.
Yeah,
Right.
that's exactly right.
I mean, it's listen, there's no line, there's no reaching them. There's no point in trying. There is no need to be tolerant of the intolerant.
Mm.
They bathe in their ignorance. They've made their bed. They may lie upon it or in it. And that's it. Like I literally, I looked in my bag of fucks and I have none left to give.
I know. Somebody just Class Bravo just made a comment that I wanted to respond to it, wanting us to find somebody who specializes in cults and things like that and propaganda. Working on that. I'll use this as a segue to a couple of lives that we're doing next week. Next Wednesday night, we're gonna have a couple of special guests, and we'll get more details as we get a little bit closer. But our topic is going to be conflict resolution. And the reason we want to do that is because we know that families have been divided over this, and it's sad to me that that's happened. Quite frankly, I am fortunate, I guess, that that's not impacted me. I have no interest in sitting across the table from someone who does not prioritize human rights. It's just not. It's just I'm at this point in my life. I'm just not interested. If you're not, excuse me, 10 toes down on human rights, rights of the BIPOC community, women's, trans rights, you name it, forget it. Miss me with that bullshit. But I want to use our platform to create a space for people who do genuinely want to reconnect with family members. And the Trumpism will be gone. MAGA will still be around, but we want to try to create space for people to learn how to reconnect with those that they've lost. Having gone through a dear friend of mine is, at death's door. I want to encourage people, if you have regrets, there's ways that we can process them, and I think, hopefully we can live our life without regrets. So that's going to be next Wednesday night. There'll be more details to come. And then next Friday night, we'll be doing Are You Okay again. We had a lot of success with that. We had some really, really great conversations, and I'll be joined by a special guest for that evening as well, a person who specializes in mental health support. And we'll be talking more about that as we get closer. But thank you for that suggestion, propaganda and cults and all that kind of stuff. Actually, I want to encourage everybody, if there's a topic that you really feel that would fit within what Anthony and I try to do here, we're intrigued by that, because I think what you've hopefully seen by what we're trying to do is find particular topics. We were very fortunate to have Professor Ben Dowd-Arrow just a couple nights ago talking about gun violence in America, and it was powerful. We had a lot of great conversations about a lot of the data behind it, different perspectives. We've touched on education. So we'll continue to do these things. So thank you for that suggestion. We're working on it. All right. Thank you, friends. Please continue to like and share. Let's see if we get to 100K. Thanks, Heidi Ho.
Oh,
Hi,
wow.
Tyler.
Hey, how you doing?
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, I kind of go on what you were saying about conflict of a resolution with family members. I'm dealing with that with a friend of mine. I've known him for about 30 years. And for me, I've tried to talk to her about the detrimental part of having, Trump. What I'm very confused is because she hated the Florida governor, DeSantis.
DeSantis, yep.
And she thinks he was the spawn of the devil. But yet she doesn't see the same fucking thing that Trump is doing.
Hmm.
How do you get to that point in recognizing one person that is a part of it, a Christian nationalism, a movement, and it taking people's rights away, but yet doesn't see it with Trump? It boggles me.
Go for it, Anthony.
Here's a fun exercise. You get quotes and you ask the person who you think said it. you record their answers, then you reveal the actual answers.
Hmm.
And then you ask them to reflect upon that, right? I think that's probably the simplest way to do it, because without knowing who said it, hopefully that sparks something, right? And I've seen it work before, and so it might be useful. If not, at least it's an easy way to have a conversation that's not adversarial.
Right. I mean, that's a really good idea. I might actually do that.
Something you mentioned this you mentioned this earlier, Anthony. We were talking about Jordan Klepper. I think he did a focus group with something similar to that, and he said, "Who said this? Trump or a racist sandwich?" And he asked Trump voters, and the answers were amazing. That people literally said, "Well, that would be a racist sandwich." Like, no, that was Trump. So to your point, I think that's a really great exercise. Is that you just
That is a very good idea. I might actually do that.
yeah, it's a really good call, Anthony. Really good call. It's a great way to do it.
Yeah, we do. Oh, hey, just let you know, I'll be there on Friday. How you doing Friday?
Yeah, that'll be next Friday night. We'll be doing that.
Yeah, next Friday.
Yeah, thank you, Tally Ho. We appreciate that. Really do. Well,
Yeah, I'll
please come on
definitely be
back.
there.
Excellent.
I really enjoyed it last time, so it really
Good,
helped
man.
me out. And I'm doing a lot better now. I'm in a
Good.
better place in the mind, and still struggling, but it is what it is.
Well, we're all struggling, bro, and that's why we're doing this. So it's like the first step is the one you took by saying that you're having a tough time. So I think we're all in it together. We're all in it together, brother. We got you.
All right, man. I'm going to step down. I really appreciate for bringing me up, man.
As always, thanks a lot, Tally. See you, brother.
All right, how you do this?
I got you.
All right,
I got you. You got it. It's a really good call out, Anthony. It's a great exercise because it literally puts people on blast. They don't even realize it.
Yeah. Well, also it's a really easy way to illustrate similarities, right, or differences depending upon how you approach doing it, right?
Yep.
And it doesn't insult people because it's like you're just having a conversation, right?
Correct.
It's not a test. It's not a gotcha.
Correct. Good evening, friend. How are you?
How is everybody? I'm wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm coming in tonight because I really do have a question. And we understand all the hypocrisy that's happening with the MAGAs and the Republican Party. But here is where my question and my confusion comes in. How do we even go about changing that when they have the majority of the votes in the districts that they're in, such as T. Green? Everybody is going to support her. So getting her out for her rhetoric is going to be something very difficult to do. How could we actually try to build something where we can get them out the way, but we know that they've got such a strong base with their foolery, then how do we deal with that? That's my question.
That's a complicated answer because we're talking about gerrymandered districts. We're talking about voter suppression. There's things like that, which is, again, you guys have heard me talk about this. Politics is at the local level is the most important, which is why you see a lot of victories across the country, like in Wisconsin recently, with that Supreme Court seat being flipped, means that those districts that have been gerrymandered for over a decade are now going to be drawn constitutionally. That's what it takes. MTG, for example, she is in a bright red district, whether it be gerrymandered or not. So that's a tough seat. What you need is a Republican, a traditional Republican prior to the days of MTG to say, look, she's a freaking nut job, but I believe that we spend too much money or whatever that number is, traditional Republican values to whatever that is, but to run against her because she's nuts. Her own party hates her. But because that district is so red, they're stuck with her.
Do you think
One second, friend, hold on 1 second. Your favorite biker, please request, get in the box. We'd like to chat.
Do you think with the amount of Republicans that are stepping down and desiring not to run for their seats again, is that going to put us in a better place, or is it going to keep us at the same positions that we're in, where we're constantly trying to get people to understand that this is really about our democracy and about the rights of citizens? I've said to you before that I think where we really made our biggest mistake as politicians, is because the government stopped believing in its people.
Mm.
And when you can't support the citizens in your state or your cities or your country, then we're getting all of this excess stuff that is filtering to everybody. How do we do something different that we can have a leg to stand on? Because I'm feeling right now, every time I get on a live or I'm watching the news, I am so tired of hearing about the orange man. How
Mm.
is it that this man can manipulate all forces of media with all of his shenanigans and we keep pushing it? Do we
Well,
just,
friend, you're a teacher. You know the answer to that.
I know, but still, it's frustrating for me.
I know. It's
And
frustrating for all of us. I mean, I think it's the biggest. We did that live specifically on education. We'll do more of those. We just see the gap. I mean, I think what's the number? America reads at a fifth grade reading level on average. I
oh
think
yeah,
that's
we're
about
at the
right.
bottom of the barrel. I've got students right now in the sixth grade who cannot read at all.
Yeah,
And
that's part of it. So you
yeah,
become susceptible, right? Those confirmation biases. Like I was in a live recently, and then I tell my kids who they're going to vote for. I tell my wife who to vote for. That's the problem, because the right wing, and again, somebody who does, marketing and all those kinds of things in my past, I can say the Republican Party and their right wing echo chamber, one of the greatest marketing organizations that we've ever seen, because they're able to convince the people that are impacted the most by their hate to vote for them. Anthony's analogy, pissing down your leg, tell you it's raining.
yeah, I just don't like the great divide that they have created amongst people. I've never grew up in anything like this, and so to see that my students and my family members are going to have to deal with this, and they have to be great critical thinkers, because if they're not, they're just going to believe whatever they see and hear and not do the research and understand what does this really mean. I think that we need to bring the level of civics back into the systems in order for students to really understand the legislative branches and the Constitution. And I think when we do that, which of course, I'm going to do my part, even though I'm a science teacher, I still throw it in there in an annotated way. But I think
Here, science teachers.
yeah, so I think that we all need to do this first so that we can make sure that the children who are coming behind us will at least have some clarity so that they won't fall for the bullshit. Sorry to say it, but it's the bullshit.
It is. It is. I mean, once again, I can't reiterate this enough, and I'm glad you said it the way that you did, is that the people that are impacted the most, if we just talk about it from a policy perspective, right? Look at the assault on education coming from the right. The people that are impacted the most need public education, not only for the education side, but sometimes it's the only decent meal that kids in those families get
Mm-hmm.
during the day, right? And
Yeah.
yet they want to cut funding to public education, which forces those schools to close for vouchers that not every family can afford. It's just crazy to me. Crazy, because they want to keep the electorate dumb. That's
Yes.
what they want to do.
And that just, gets under my skin. That's just something that, I just can't even fathom, and I just don't understand it. But at the end of the day, we really need to focus on what we need to do in terms of education, because we're not even looked at as the number one as we used to be. So we really do have to focus on what's really going on. And COVID was a definite eye opener for not
Sure.
just educators, but parents as well. Parents realize, oh my God, I can't do this because I don't
Hmm.
know this content. And so, we really need to start pushing the level of academics. And I say to all of the listeners, you can go to the dollar store. They got booklets in there that you can buy out the dollar store, the Dollar Tree, anything that will help your students learn. And those things are good for primary levels and everything. Get them to reading. Get them a book. Let them read something. You can go to the library. But we have to do this because our children, our youth, is going to be looking like the picture that's behind you, facts.
Exactly.
And we got to stop it because only we can stop it. And so we have to push forward. And I'm available for anything. You guys can look on my site or whatever it is that I need. I am a passionate educator, and I believe in let's change this thing around, because we can change it around. People like the little ignorant orange man and his little posses. Cut them off at the knees because they're just ignorant and they have no knowledge of what to do. They just running off at the mouth.
You're so right, my friend. You're so right. You know how much I appreciate what you do, and teachers in general, completely underappreciated in our society. But the ones that care, like you, and most do, are all about what you're about. You know, your hands are tied by so many things. That the amount of money that teachers have to reach into their own pocket because their budgets are being cut, or they're just being disrespected, or parents think that they can do a better job, and we're losing great teachers because of it. And I'm saddened by that, but I also know that to turn this around requires education. It requires us rolling up our hands and getting dirty.
Yep. So you can go ahead and drop me out, but I just had that question and I just had to share my little input there. But love what you're doing, and I jump in whenever I can. So
Appreciate you,
you
friend,
guys
very
take
much.
care.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right.
See you
Bye.
later.
Good
Bye.
night.
Mad respect for teachers. You know that about me, Anthony, and I know you'd feel the same way. It's just constant, man.
Yep.
It goes back to the tenets, right? It's about so where is it? In disdain for intellectuals and the arts. Fascist nations tend to promote and tolerate open hostility to higher education. I'll read that again. Fascist nations tend to promote and tolerate open hostility to higher education and academia. It is not uncommon for professors and other academics to be censored or even arrested. Free expression in the arts is openly attacked, and governments often refuse to fund the arts. So throughout our conversation this evening, it's easy to make parallels to what MAGA is.
Yep. 100%. Now, what happened? There were a couple people that you asked to come up into the box. Where did they disappear to? Because, like, as soon as you said it, I didn't see their names anymore. Where'd they go?
They flew like the cowards they are.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's how
a
it
shame.
works. I know. Thank you, everybody. Continue to like and share. We're almost at 100K. Let's see if we can get there in the next 5 minutes. It'd be great.
Sorry.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Can you hear me?
We got you.
Okay, great. I don't know. I mean, I'm in my 50s and
Gen X, welcome.
thanks. When I was growing up, I used to watch The World at War. I don't know if anybody remembers that, but I used to watch that when I was like, a kid. I was fascinated by it. My dad was in the Navy in World War II, so I would watch it and just, it just seemed like, I mean, first of all, it was a long time ago, but that there's so many parallels to, what was what was documented in that series that's happening now. And I was wondering if there's a way to show what happened to the SMOTC supporters, the people who are very who were drawn into that whole regime. Like, what happened to Germany? What happened to those people who either turned a blind eye or participated in that regime in one shape or fashion? Because I think it's important that what happened after the war, what sanctions were put upon like the Germans, and after that regime was dismantled.
Yeah, I mean, I can touch on that. Anthony, did you have something you wanted to say on that topic?
I mean, I know what happened, but I'm just
Sure.
saying, would it be useful to have that conversation?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm sorry. I misunderstood. Yeah, I totally agree, because I think that's a really good call out, because there's a lot of parallels. And of course, FemBlock, we know that our friends on the right don't want to talk about that.
Right.
They certainly do not appreciate and understand why we constantly make connections to the mustache man, but there are too many similarities. I think that's an excellent call out, because you
Thank
can draw
you.
the parallels. Because I mean,
Yeah, you can
we've been referring to the 14 tenets of fascism, right, tonight,
Mhm.
and you can draw the same comparisons to 1930s Germany to what we're seeing now.
Absolutely. And I think that, I think that people like kind of like blindly follow, particularly what's happening now in this country with these, with the MAGA cult, that they don't really understand that if it comes to be that that dusty orange cheese nugget whatever gets back into power, that at some point
Yeah.
he's going to turn on them.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not like, okay, well, yeah, he's back in office, let's get all the queers and trans and blacks and Mexicans and all these people out, but he's going to turn on them,
Oh yeah.
and they're
They're the
going to,
threat.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, I'm wondering if there's like a way to kind of show what those parallels are, like, in the live, whether or not, MAGA is like, listening or even cares. But, to really show like, okay, this is what happened in 1933, 19, the 40s, like after the war, and this is what could happen right now.
You bring up a really excuse me, you bring up a really great point. Whether MAGA listens or not, my friend, I think it's important for all of us because these are the elements of education that don't necessarily get taught. And the way that you're
Oh,
describing it,
absolutely.
to be able to literally connect the dots between,
Hmm.
what we know was such a despicable and horrible, disgusting part of world history to what
Right.
we're seeing today. And there's so many crossovers and so many similarities. So I think it just gives all of us more, ammunition in this fight, so to speak. I love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, I love history. I love, I actually really respected the previous woman who was in the box, because education is important. Like, we grew up in my house, that's what was important, because that was what was denied to my parents
Right.
when they were growing up. So they were
Right.
like, mm-mm, like, this is not the reality that we want for our kids.
Hmm.
So, hence looking at like history documentaries, like a total geek that I was. But
Same
um,
here.
yeah, so I don't know. I mean, maybe it's something that could be brought up. I do like your lives a lot, and it's very educational,
Thank
and
you.
so
Thank you,
hopefully I
Elise.
can see it.
I appreciate that. I think it's a really good idea. These are the kinds of things that we're constantly looking to talk about, and I appreciate your perspective. I mean, I think we've always thought about it, right? We've always said, "Oh yeah, there's comparisons," but let's start to draw some lines. Let's
Yeah, draw the line.
identify what the the elements were. We knew what the rise was. We knew
Hmm.
who the mustache man was prior to him achieving power. But
That's
I've
right.
studied this, and I love that. I love studying that part of history because it tells us so many things about what could happen again if we're not paying attention. I mean, the rise of Germany goes back to post World War One, Woodrow
That's
Wilson
right.
turning a blind eye, nationalism again,
Hmm.
isolationism again,
Hmm.
ignoring what was happening in Europe because he wanted to be an isolationist, and look what happened.
Right.
So we history has a crazy way of repeating itself.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I'm a visual person, so I kind of see things like, in a different way. Not saying better, but just different,
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I'm here for it if you decide to do that.
We
So.
will, and I can never mind decide. We've decided we're gonna do it. We just have to. We're gonna. All do will reach out. So if there's anybody in particular, I'll do this right now on the spot. If there's anyone who specialize, I think you mentioned yourself, you've studied it. I want to encourage more people. If you've studied that era of history, and whether it's your profession or your passion, please reach out to myself or Anthony so that we can really sort of create a panel to have these kind of discussions so that we can really start to paint a picture about
Yes,
why we have
please,
to avoid this
please.
history.
It's like painting a picture. It's like this. I mean, some people are visual learners. Some people are like, I think one of the reasons why people are drawn to them is, maybe they're auditory. Like, I don't know, what I mean? But I think, there has to be different ways to try to reach people, as a, educator, artist, and all that stuff. There's different things, and you're in marketing, so you know what, can reach people,
Mm,
and what cannot,
right,
right?
right.
So,
That's a fantastic idea. Please, I'm going to make sure I'm following you here. I am. So, please continue to stay in touch because I want to give you full credit for that idea. I think it's a great one. We will do this. It's going to happen.
all right. Thank you so much. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
you.
friend. Appreciate you as well. Have a great night.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye. I love that idea, Anthony. We need to do that.
I already sent you one article.
Oh, thank you, brother. Of course. It's good to have you in my corner, my friend.
I know it's shocking. As soon as she said it, I was like, oh man, that was like obvious and staring us in the face. Hello, trees in a forest.
I love that. Mama Zahn, how are you?
Hello, everybody. So, kind of tying back to the last guest, I wanted to find out if you guys have watched Against All Enemies yet.
No, somebody brought that up recently.
So it's Midas Touch put together a documentary. You can rent it on Amazon or Apple.
Okay.
It's very well done. But I think it goes hand in hand kind of with what happens after, because I think one thing that we all need to realize is that even if Biden wins, we're in for a long road, right? It's going to be a bumpy road no matter what, because it,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and if you watch the documentary, you'll see that they are really they are going after the veterans. They are recruiting veterans like crazy to the militias, to all of those things, right? And they're really pushing their views on that they believe they're right. And so it's not going to be
against all enemies. I'm sorry. didn't mean to
Against All
interrupt.
Enemies.
Yeah, the
It's
chat
really
had asked.
good for you to
Against All
listen.
Enemies,
And it was really well done. And it just shows like things that we need to be worried about and concerned about. And even if Biden wins, it's not going to be an easy, smooth road. So we need to all kind of be prepared for that. And just understand what we're up against, because it's definitely this underpinning of fascism, and they're trying to use some of our military against it, right? I mean, they're going after our veterans, and they're actually going after active duty police and military to try to recruit them. So it's eye-opening.
It's certainly eye-opening. Not surprising, sadly.
Nope. And the other thing I wanted to talk is you were asking about things that we can discuss. So I became disabled 4 years ago. And I would love if we can have an episode maybe on healthcare and how broken our healthcare system is, and how one thing that's been hard being disabled is living in a capitalistic society, right? Where you're not as productive, you're not a productive member of society anymore, right? And it's really difficult. And then we know what happened with the disabled during
Thank you, please.
the mustache man, right? We know what happened with the disabled, right? So they were some of the first targeted as well.
Indeed.
So it's definitely an uncomfortable feeling knowing that this is where we're at, and I've become disabled. And I think there's many of us out there that are in that same boat. And it would be awesome if we can discuss it, because I think there's we have so many marginalized communities, but often the disabled community is not remembered along with those other groups.
It's a very good call out, and thank you for that. I appreciate that. And that goes back to a couple of categories of characteristics of fascism: disdain for the recognition of human rights, and the identification of enemies as scapegoats as unifying clause, right? So you can certainly add disabled to that list. Society stigmatizes without question.
Yeah, and many from COVID became disabled.
Yeah. Yep.
So the numbers are growing exponentially, and they want to say, oh, entitlements, but I've worked 35 years of my life, so I'm entitled to have some help when I'm disabled. But then they want to make it as it's a bad thing, right? So it's just something to maybe think about later if you decide you want to have a topic on it. I think it would be good, because I think there's more and more of us that are disabled from COVID. I think it's a concern with the underpinnings of fascism bubbling up to the top, and there's a lot of things. So just something to talk about. But I mostly wanted to ask you about the Against All Enemies, because it's really good. I think you'll like it. It's really well done, but it's also very scary, to see what we're coming up against.
You're right, and I appreciate that call out, and I think we're gonna add it to the list. It's a good call, and again, against all enemies, folks. I saw some people saying they saw it on YouTube, and it's out there. I'm sure we can find it. But thank you for bringing that up, Malzahn. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys for all you do. I appreciate it. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you. Same to you. John Voth, I just sent you an invite, John. Please jump in the box, John Voth. We want to talk to you. You said George Soros is the biggest contributor to the Biden campaign, but we want to make sure that we can have that conversation. Hi, John.
Hello.
How are
Hey,
you?
what's up, man?
How's it going?
Hey, was the guy that ran into the Baltimore Bridge, was he Ukrainian?
The guy that ran into the Baltimore Bridge, John?
Yeah, the freighter that crashed into the bridge.
Yeah, the freighter, the accident in Baltimore Harbor.
Yeah, was he Ukrainian?
I don't know. Was he?
Yeah.
Was he? And you
Why
think that's
didn't he
part?
have insurance?
So you're blaming the ship's captain for that, John?
No, I just thought all freighters had insurance, and why do we have to pay for it?
Are you saying they don't have insurance, John?
Well, Joe Biden says that we're going to pay for it.
No, he said we're going to fix the bridge because that's what we do as Americans.
Oh,
those of us that care about our country.
Right. So they don't use the insurance on all those freighters. We have to pay for it too.
John, I don't think you understand when a president of the United States, when you have a vital shipping port like the port of Baltimore and a bridge that allows people to get to and from work, because I know that's important to you. You want to make sure people can get to their jobs. That's what a leader does. A leader says, we'll get this fixed.
You know, what's really weird is all of the food processing plants that got burned down during his administration too.
Oh, is that weird?
Yeah, hundreds of them.
Who do you support for president?
Oh, Joe Biden, definitely, because George Soros is his biggest fundraiser.
Who's your support for president, John?
It would definitely be George Soros because his son goes into the White House 3 times a week.
Oh, okay.
Well,
so
3 times a month. My bad.
So John, let's level set. Let's level set. What'd you have for dinner tonight?
I don't know. What did you have for dinner?
Nobody fucking cares. What?
I'm looking up this food processing plant. I've heard some crazy stuff, but that one I had not heard.
What? Like,
what?
Was that gorilla?
Was that a real thing? Let me see. Let's go to the fact checkers.
Could have been.
Are fires at food processing plants a new trend? False. The claim of a new trend of fires at food processing facilities does not hold up upon scrutiny. All of the fires on meme lists involved explainable causes and were found no examples of suspected arson.
Well,
so, and also, what was he saying? Something about the ships. I don't know where he's
no insurance because
the term freighter. It's a container ship.
Correct.
Oy vey.
Good evening, Kyle.
Evening, gentlemen.
How are you tonight?
I'm okay.
What's on your mind?
Couple things now. Jesus, these fucking wackos will look for anything but the truth, won't they?
Yeah, that's a pretty fair assessment.
Anything but the truth must be the explanation. You just a few moments ago, you were discussing World War II, and you mentioned why it's interesting to you. And the reason why I always love studying it is because it's a representation of the human condition and the worst that we are and can be. And I don't think anything highlights it more than this one book by Christopher Browning. It's called Ordinary Men. I think they even made a documentary about it by the same name. But it's just it's about this,
Ordinary Men, you said? Christopher Browning?
Yeah, yes. Read it. Put that at the top of your list. You want to understand the human condition and how pathetic we are as humans, how easily manipulated we are. It always that there was a fake documentary back in like early 2010, 11 called Zeitgeist. Don't mind the documentary, but I enjoy the name because it kind of expresses this collective consciousness that embodies society, and that's what happened to these men. And you see it now. So it was more or less a militia group, and they were in charge of going behind the Northern Group A, Army Group A, in Operation Barbarossa, and they were given the job of, I'm trying to tread lightly, exterminating certain things.
Sure.
And it wasn't bugs.
Understood.
Largely in Poland.
Yep.
And they were just, they were cops. They were just constables, and they were the ones that carried this out. So it's,
Correct.
hence it's Ordinary Men, the name of the book. If you want the full title, it's Ordinary Men, Reserve Police Battalion 101. And the final, in Poland, by Christopher Browning.
Well, then I think the example. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, we were talking earlier about how the reach out now is to these, either veterans or lost souls who, again, people take an oath to sign up to serve their country, and then something has happened that they become aligned with this particular level of hatred, right? So they seem susceptible to that kind of recruiting that you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't think it's any coincidence that the same ones that were responsible for the beer hall putsch in, what was it, 1922? I could be wrong on that date, but in the early 20s, those responsible were former veterans of the Weimar army. And remember what these people went through. I mean, between the gassing, the shell, the constant mortar artillery fire, that's it has its impacts. We know that now. When somebody passes away, we can examine their brain, and the causes of CTE, yada yada yada. So,
well, I think
I'm not saying that all vets suffer from this. But...
No. I know what you're saying, but we were just talking about people who have some knowledge of this particular era in history. It sounds like you do. So, like we just discovered, we're going to try to do a live identifying similarities between that part in our history and what we're experiencing now. So we'll be announcing that. If it's something you'd like to participate in, since you're obviously well read and seem to know a lot about that history and are passionate about it, and then uncovering the scabs of history, picking at them, because it's really, really necessary that we do that. Really necessary.
Oh, I agree. And the reason I studied history was because, there's this underlying desire to understand why things are the way they are now. And the only way you can do that is study history.
Indeed.
So, that's why I took it up in college. But, it's a fascinating read. I did just want to point out that one similarity, and I think this, it's like I said, excuse me, no coincidence that the same people, same type of people, it's former military that engage in these militias and potential coups. I don't know the statistics on those involved in J6, but if I had to go out on a limb, I'd probably say it's a significant number of former military.
I know this topic hits Anthony hard. I can tell, because it's one of those things that when we see veterans who just lost their way, and how sad literally it's become. I mean, they've made their bed, like you said earlier, but it's just really.
The cognitive dissonance, you see, so many of I graduated high school in 2006. So, it was the kids just a year or two ahead of me, as I was graduating, they were coming back, and just seeing, the devastation to their minds, and, that they weren't who they were anymore, and it was sad. But, they would discuss what exactly was wrong. And then those that are still with us, or were with us up until 2016, a lot of them were Trump supporters, and it was sad. And, they saw the truth, they would talk about it, and yet they were still somehow carried away by this zeitgeist.
I know.
But it's that word, man. I hate to use the word just because that mockumentary that was
but it's
with it,
appropriate
word.
Yeah, It is.
Yeah, it's crazy. One other thing, I don't want to take up all your time.
No, you're good.
No one has, that as far as I know, has discussed it. I kind of went down a rabbit hole. Somebody mentioned Michael Flynn in a TikTok the other day, and I got onto his family. He has a brother, Charles Flynn. At the time, he was a rank or two beneath Michael, and he's now a 4-star general in charge of the Pacific Command with regards to the Army, I believe. Could be the National Guard. Either way, he's a top-notch guy. He and another gentleman, Piat or Piaf, gave testimony. They were the top-notch brass in charge of the D.C. National Guard, I believe. And please, everybody, do your research. Don't take my word for it. I'm positive that I don't have this 100% correct. But these two gentlemen were if they needed to release the National Guard on January 6th, these were the two guys you had to call. They had the authority.
And Chris Miller, too, who was the acting SecDef, and there's a memo from him prior to that date about no one will be doing anything unless you hear from me.
Yeah. So. Well, did you happen to read that? I guess it's a memo by Earl Matthews, Colonel Earl Matthews. He was the top-notch lawyer for the D.C. National Guard, and he has since been retaliated against for writing a memo to the January 6th committee indicating that the Army, the Piat or Piaf general, and Charles Flynn both lied to said committee. And the reason, let me bring it back round to the beginning. It's no coincidence that the people in 1922 and January 6th were both former military and current. And it's just scary because those two aforementioned gentlemen are still top brass within the U.S. military. And it's scary just to think that these are only two people that we can identify. How many people work at the Pentagon or for, any defense institution associated with it that might hold these coup-related tendencies or just, it's scary. I don't want to go down that.
No, it's a good point, and I know where you're going, Kyle, because if you read, and if you can read, there's a 50-page summary of Project 2025 if people don't want to spend as much time on it as I have, but they talk about loyalists throughout government. One of the, again, a tenet of fascism, rampant cronyism and corruption. That's another example. When you want to literally bring in loyalists and put them in positions of power. So within the military, within the 3-letter agencies, imagine a loyalist that's committed to fascism being ahead of the FDA, who might have an issue with vaccines or might have an issue with, gender affirming care, all those kinds of things. This is what we're talking about. These are the exact examples of what we're talking about.
And
right?
nobody fucking knows about it.
You're right. They threw around
talk about it or acknowledge it. So that's what I came up here to talk about. I don't want to sound like a tinfoil hat guy, but
no, it's totally no. I got you. I think again, the reason that this is important for these conversations is because of exactly what we're talking about, the way you brought it up, because people don't know about these things, right? So we take these things for granted. Everything that we've seen during the Trump era has been a test of our systems. Every single time. One test after another. And our systems so far haven't broken, but I think you can make a case that in some areas they have. But things like this, that we're so close to having the freedoms that we care about so much, and our entire system of government just gone because people are turning a blind eye to what's happening right in front of them. That's the point.
Yeah. When I look back at the time, I think I don't think this is hyperbolic at all. Another month or two with that administration, I don't think we would be calling America, a form of democracy at this point.
I don't disagree. I don't think it's hyperbolic.
Like you said, all these institutions, yes, many of them held, many did not. I mean, from as little as the appointment of Chow into Secretary of Labor, people might not look at that as, putting, a loyalist in, but that is 100% putting a loyalist in. It's
Ben,
quid pro quo, up and down
Ben
the line.
Carson.
Yeah.
Ben Carson, perfect example. I mean, a
So,
doctor for the HUD secretary. Come on.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Appreciate you.
yeah, I don't want to keep going. I'll end up rambling. I highly recommend you read that book. Everybody, it's really eye opening. Because
I got it. My list is getting long.
I know. Well, I'm sure all the other ones are good books too.
I appreciate
So,
you, Kyle. Thanks for
all
joining,
right,
brother.
guys. Yep. Hey,
Thanks
thanks
a
for
lot,
what you
man.
guys do. All right.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Yep. You as well.
Bye bye. Everybody, please continue to like and share. Really appreciate you. Oh, we have a return guest. Good evening, sister. How are you?
Hey, good evening, guys. In terms of loyalists, just really quickly, don't forget Sessions, AG. That's supposed to be America's lawyer, was working for the White House instead of us.
Right.
Like,
Not the president's lawyer. That's exactly right.
He wasn't the president's lawyer, but he was definitely acting like it. For those
Sure
that don't
was.
know, he was basically representing him for the emoluments clause lawsuits that was eventually kicked down by SCOTUS. So let's just talk about like how far we can go and how some things got through that shouldn't have.
It's a really good point. I mean, obviously, Sessions recused himself over certain things, and then he was vilified and then basically fired because he did the right thing. How ironic.
Ironic. And for those that don't know, Coretta Scott King wrote a letter against Sessions being in any position, but he actually did the right thing in his role, despite his closeted background in supporting white supremacy. I just came up because this comes up a lot in a lot of the lives, and I just want to speak to this really quickly. I know we talk about the Christian nationalism and how far that's gone. And then I start to see people writing, well, we need to tax the churches and all this stuff, right? I always find that response fascinating because I think that most people are thinking about mega churches, right? I don't think they're understanding the gravity of what they're saying, right? Because that would then include Black churches. And most people don't know Black churches were there to protect us from the people in that picture behind you. Because we couldn't be two people talking in the street without being harmed. So one of the things we did was sit in the church. And for those that don't know, many of us who came from that boat were actually Black Muslims. And if you know anything about the Gullah Geechees, many of them kept that. They didn't have a building to be in, but we were forced to pretty much lose some of that part of our history. And I know a lot of people don't know how many Black Muslims there are, but like it didn't start with what you think is the American version of it, because most people only think about like Farrakhan, but that's not it. The key to this argument is I think there's a confusion about, even though there are Black churches that have kind of moved closer to supporting white supremacy and this nationalism, I won't disagree with seeing some of that and seeing some of the preachers. But you have to understand, well, this is the day MLK was unalived. He was a preacher. Like everything that was being done to get us out to vote, to protect our rights, came from the Black church in many ways. So I always get a little confused when people conflate that like general framework and not understand that for us in many ways it was a form of protection. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do. I know exactly what you're saying. I think you're right. I think people, I won't speak for everyone, but I think in general that conversation is about mega churches. You think about the Joel Osteens of the world who, during floods and horrible weather wouldn't open the door to people who needed safety and shelter, things like that. I think you're right. I think that has become I think legitimate. I do believe that organizations like Osteen and other mega churches absolutely need to be taxed, but I agree with you, and especially the way you broke it down, that we have to be careful how we use that term.
Yeah, and
That's why
someone. Okay, go ahead, Anthony.
that's why I always preface it with, you know, three points. One, there should not be a church in which the religious leader has multiple jets. There's absolutely no need for that, right? Two, when you become a multi-million-dollar business as religion, you need to be paying taxes, right? And three, I call out specific people, right? To make sure people understand that what I'm saying is about mega churches, right? And I will throw the Catholic Church under that bus, right?
Absolutely.
They've got a whole host of things they need to be still paying for, right? Now, specific to community churches, right? They don't even have enough money really to keep the doors open. So, they're not on anyone's radar because, it's money in, it's money out, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that distinction is important. That's why I always try to call out these charlatans, right? I mean, look, Joel Osteen has made tens of millions of dollars off of him and his wife's bullshit dog and pony show where they pimp out a new book, right? That stuff to me is disgusting. And Kenneth, what's his name with the 3 jets,
Copeland,
right? Copeland, right? These guys, Jerry Falwell, all of them, they're all just absolutely disgusting people, right? And they deserve to be taxed. The point to where you get to tax, I think, should be when an organization can't prove that it's money in, money out, right? Like I'm fine with preachers getting paid. You gotta eat,
sure,
right? But it needs to be no different than as a small business owner what I'm allowed to write off, right? There needs to be some kind of a clawback here because we lose hundreds of $millions a year in tax revenue to these mega churches, and that stuff has got to stop because this is also where the cult comes from, right? Mm-hmm. And this is where Christian nationalism springs from.
Right, but like there's someone in the chat right now saying all churches, right? The problem with the conversation, people do not know the distinctions, and that's where we're having problems in many of these instances. And don't get me wrong, I totally agree with what you're saying, but I always find it challenging when people want to do like a blanket and have no understanding of the nuance, right? The other key piece that you just said is like, yeah, plenty of our churches don't even have enough money to even stay open for multiple reasons. And don't get me wrong, we got our problems in our churches. I'm not trying to clean up that, we don't have issues too to some extent. But when I see arguments like that, there is a huge disconnect about why we needed them. And I promise you, most people won't know the difference between churches that help people get out to vote versus being in politics. They will not know that distinction.
Right.
And they don't understand, like what Georgia did was to
Souls
stop
to the polls,
souls
right?
to the polls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
They would see it as, well, they were involved in politics. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like they are not understanding how they're still harming us with just this general push back on Christian nationalism. They're not understanding.
Didn't they change the law? I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt stuff. Didn't they change the law in Georgia so they couldn't vote on Sundays?
Yes.
Right.
Because that's how we organized. It's a part of our culture of voting because we were being unalived trying to vote. Like people aren't understanding what they're saying. They won't see that as a separate distinction. They would still see that as politics.
Right.
And that's why I think it's important that we have these conversations so they understand these versions of the distinctions. One of the other things that Georgia did is kept people from using like buses, because that's how they brought the souls to the polls in many ways. There was mass transportation. So now you can only have one other person in the car to come vote.
So I guess I missed that. So they weren't allowed to use public transportation?
Public transportation is not always accessible depending on where you are, to
Right.
vote. Remember, they have moved polling places in distances so far away. That's one of the things they do outside of the voting IDs. One
That's
of the
right.
other things they do, they make it impossible for us to get to
to that.
polling places, which means that some public transportation is absolutely not even available.
That's exactly right. And then the ID sometimes, oftentimes, because that's considered a poll tax, which is
It's a poll tax on top of
unconstitutional.
that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
And so when we had things like Black Votes Matters buses helping in those states, they have written laws to keep those buses out.
Hmm.
And they weren't even connected, excuse me, to the churches.
Hmm.
But it's the way in which we get to vote in protection in the ways in which they've been targeting. And I just don't think people understand the nuance enough to not to not what's the word I want to say? To not vote for things like that. You should not be voting against souls to the polls.
I got you. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you understand what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying. I think this is the danger of generalization, right? I think we would all agree that mega churches and people like Joel Osteen and Kenneth Copeland should absolutely be paying taxes and whatever that would look like. I think we would all agree on that. But you're right. So and I've been guilty of that myself. I've said tax the churches and have never thought about it the way in which you described it. I think at my core, I know exactly that growing up in a small town and a small church, and you get lucky if you could scrape together enough, money to have a bake sale. So I get it. I just never thought about it the way in which you described it. Again, thank you for your education on this topic, but I think people would certainly agree that there needs to be accountability for the mega churches somewhere, somehow.
And I don't disagree with that part. Like that part we can be on board for. But I think that it starts to trickle down without an
Mm-hmm.
understanding of the trickle down part
Mm-hmm.
and who else is being harmed. And
Mm-hmm.
that was my main reason for coming up. But like there was a lot that you guys did today, and I just appreciate you just constantly trying to bring this level of awareness. But yeah, like you have to remember, like we were hiding from those people that's in the picture behind you,
Mm.
and they were still blowing. What's the word? Um, can I say bombing? I don't.
Sure. You said it.
And they were still bombing our churches when we were in it.
Yeah.
So like, it's such a it's such a huge disconnect to me when I see this, and even my Black Muslim family members can't even show themselves because of the hatred from the other side. So
I'm
it's just
sure.
it's very complicated conversation here, but I just don't think people understand how how targeted it is for my people to even exercise any form of religion if they decide to do so.
Well, like we were talking about the other night when you joined, we were talking about the reason that there's so much aversion from the right and the Christian nationalists and whatever about not wanting to teach history. This is another example. It's like at its surface, without people understanding history, the term America First, they don't understand why we would say, do you understand where that comes from? And their argument is like, why would that be such a bad thing? Well, this is an example as to why that's a bad thing. It's just a simple piece of education that should be a requirement. And I think that's part of the diversion. Now we know the language change and acronyms changing from DEI to didn't earn it, and all these little things that the right does that they think are subtle, but yet their voters just glom onto it. And then anything that they can do to connect themselves back to this, because this is make America great to them. That's what this is. And it's just appalling, which again is why I'm a big advocate for teaching history, unvarnished history.
I just want to say really quick because I keep seeing responses in the chat.
Mm.
We have to be very careful about what we classify a certain amount or how to use it like we use corporations. The churches are not the same thing. You cannot see them as sorry. I'm pretty sure you heard that. You can't see it
It's
as
all
the
good.
same thing. Just letting you know. Like people can't do that equivalence because it's not.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point. It's a good point. Anthony, look, you might have had a question. Something on your mind, brother?
No, sorry. Side topic. The gentleman that was up earlier talking about how the uh, captain of the ship was Ukrainian.
Mm.
The entire crew was from India, which
Yes.
now I
That was
could
the
be
other thing.
wrong, but
No, that's true.
India and Ukraine, one, are not neighbors. Two, I'm fairly certain. I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Yeah.
If I had a gentleman from Ukraine and a gentleman from India stand side by side, one would not be confused for the other.
Most likely.
And as it turns out, they used some bizarre log for a guy that was temporarily assigned to that ship who was from Ukraine.
Right.
Right. So that's like saying I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, therefore I'm as qualified as a neurosurgeon who spent 14 years becoming a neurosurgeon.
I love you, bro, but I don't want you operating on my brain.
Oh, come on, dude. What could possibly go wrong? I'll give you a lollipop and a Band-Aid.
Okay, fine. I'm a sucker. Sister, again, I just want to continue to thank you for the amount of information that you provided us. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience?
No.
This evening?
I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to come up here and say that. The other thing I want to say in contribution to the bridge being repaired, it's so funny how certain states are fine with using government money for their infrastructure, but when it comes to infrastructure that's connected to Black and Brown people, you want to question the money being used.
Indeed.
So let's just make sure that that's what's really going on, and we're not missing the conversation about like, isn't there insurance on the boat? That is such a disingenuous argument, y'all. And one more time to the people in the chat. I know y'all think you understand why churches were created for Black people, and you want to say that it was for it's all churches. It is not the same. I don't care which argument that you want to come up with about let's go back to basics. Why were churches tax exempt? It still won't add up to why Black churches exist.
Well said. We appreciate you very much.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. Like, it's so frustrating. It will not match why Black churches were put in place. Go ahead, Andy.
Really quick on the bridge and Digital Sista. I hope that you come up again so we can talk about this topic. Let's talk about the nexus between institutionalized racism and bigotry and that bridge in particular, and infrastructure throughout the United States in particular, and how intimate domain has been used as a weapon to eliminate neighborhoods and bridges and certain highways to separate people from any type of economic prosperity possibilities.
Oh, there's a whole conversation about that. Another day. But that's a whole story. We can go down the road on that one. But
Yeah.
yes, like that's something that people are not understanding, which is why you're watching this pushback on this bridge, because they don't have a full understanding, and they're looking at a Black governor and a Black mayor and trying to make a judgment when they would not be making judgment when FEMA was coming to many of the disasters and catastrophes and infrastructure issues in other places. It's so obvious, and it kills me that people are pretending like they don't see the loud bigotry. Like, we hear y'all.
Yeah, I mean, it's the common theme. I was thinking about what just popped into my head was the train derailment in Ohio, right? I mean, there was always looking for somebody to blame, but there was no question about whether or not it was going to get fixed. There was no debate about that. It was going to get fixed, right? But again, because it's in a predominantly Black community in Baltimore, there's got to be a reason behind it. It was a woke captain, or it was whatever else. It's just embarrassing. And
and the DEI mayor, it's like, come on, y'all.
I know.
And I think Maria Bartiromo went straight to the immigrants who were on the bridge. Like, we need to be honest when we hear these things to push back. And this is why sometimes I know that we're, as a community, trying to come up with solutions, but we have to do the thing I keep asking us to do. The people who are the most marginalized in those spaces, even in like the Black church, has the answer for you. But if you think you're answering it for us, then you're fundamentally being what's the word? Patron. What's the word I want to say? You think
patronizing.
Patronizing.
Yep.
You think you're saving us. You think you're coming up with the solution when the reason that we have some of those things in place was to protect us from y'all. So like, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, turn that around.
So well said, friend. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Please come back.
Bye.
Bye. I learn so much from her every time she comes up. Just the perspective on things. Thank everybody. Please continue to like and share the live. We really appreciate this. Great conversations as always. Just some really important points that were addressed there about how institutionalized racism. Anthony talks about it a lot. We talk about systems that are being built on it, and we know that there's an aversion from the right that they don't want to talk about these things. They'll accuse the left of having, why do you turn everything to race? Is because it's absolutely critical that we do, to understand what's happened to our society and why we're in the place that we are, and why, if we are not paying attention, this is where we're headed. I remember there's an episode, I think it was The West Wing. I think it was right after 9/11, as a matter of fact, when they talk about they were gathered in the cafeteria, and I'm remembering this as I'm speaking, so I apologize if I misspeak. But they're talking about the terrorists that attacked us, and they were equating fundamentalists within Islam to the triple K within Christianity. And the argument to be made is that hate is hate, whatever flavor it is. Hate is hate. And we have a society that's rooted historically in hate of all types of communities, but there's been many that are part of just about every level of hate throughout our history, BIPOC in particular. And it's if we do not pay attention to this shit, it's going to happen again. And this is part of why we talk about this all the time, why it's a passion for me. Again, I bring it back up, 10 toes down on human rights. There is no but. There is no but. You either are or you aren't. There's no maybe. It's not like, yeah, on Saturdays, sure, but on Tuesdays, I care more about the price of a dozen eggs. Miss me with that bullshit. Just miss me with that bullshit. Good evening, friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Doing well, thank you. What's on your mind?
Well, Digital Sister was fantastic. I only caught part of the very first lady's talk, and she was talking, I think, on history. I'm not exactly sure, in what relation she was talking about World War II. And I find that the older I get, the more fascinated I am with history. I actually lost an uncle in World War I.
Wow.
Well, my father was 52 when he had me, so he was getting up in years. But, everything that's going on, I keep researching back to find out how it all happened. And I actually found out through research that the far right Republican Party is still pissed off at Teddy Roosevelt for the square deal.
Yeah.
And I mean, they've even admitted it. And I mean, okay, Teddy Roosevelt was a racist, and he could be an ass, and he was everything. But what he did, he helped start the Fair Trade Commission. Also, the Food and Drug Administration was the first part. He basically figured that he wanted to have control of corporation as well as consumer protection. So he knew. Yeah.
Cool. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. But I mean that, and he's what helped create the national forest.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're combining a couple of things. You're talking about FDR.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the New Deal. That's an FDR thing. But we can't apologize away their racism because of accomplishments. Now, yes, there are some things that were done that contributed to society, but it didn't benefit the BIPOC community as much as it did everybody else. I mean, I know you know that.
It hasn't.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I also agree with what Digital Sister said, because while I would like to see the mega churches taxed, we also have got a problem to where the Heritage Foundation, it's got a 501c3. They need to tighten up who is allowed to get a 501c3, and not so, because they're doing it so they can hide who their donors, and they don't have to report on how much money they're getting from people. It's to hide political funds.
Yeah, I mean, we know of tax sheltering. We know of all these kinds of things, and we can look at the Trump Truth Social merger and all that, when there's no assets in the company whatsoever, and they lost $45 million last year, and their taxes worth more than Harley Davidson and Reddit. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah.
These are examples of these things that just people just don't pay attention to because they're being lied to, and they'll accept the fact that the lies they're being told is the truth. And this is another example.
Well, didn't Trump actually help create the DWAC strictly for the merger of True Social, so that way he could take it public? Because he couldn't, because he was a major part in it, and then he also got another guy. Oh God, another Jeff Yass from
Oh yeah,
God,
who's a
to
principal in
contribute.
right? He's a
Yeah,
principal in Byte, which owns TikTok.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he contributed into DWAC back in December. Was it? I don't know if it was 2021 or 2023, but he contributed there so that way they could, really take it forward. So he's got a major share in that as well.
It's happening right in front of us at every
Yeah.
freaking turn. We got to pay attention, folks. It's really dangerous. I mean, we cannot emphasize it enough about what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Especially this is a message to people that are on the left, the far left. I get it. We know the situation in Gaza. I completely get it. I totally understand. I'm disgusted with Netanyahu. I'm done with it. But if you're gonna deny voting for the Biden administration because of that, you have a right to do that. But fascism is at our doorstep. Fascism is
Yeah.
at our doorstep.
I actually have one of those LED things on the back of my car. And so I actually put something on the back of my car, and so that way it scrolls when I'm driving down the road. And it said, I will protect my granddaughter's rights come November by voting. Are you going to protect your grandchildren?
Well said. That's what it's about.
Yeah. And so every day I can change the sign to read something else.
Can you make it big middle finger with Trump's name underneath it? Can you do that?
No, but I did say to F you to the GOP.
That counts. And I know you don't drop the F-bomb very often, so I appreciate that.
Well, I don't want you getting taken down. And I know you have had some people that have deliberately used some crap to get your live taken down.
Oh, yeah. They're out
But
there.
I really do. I appreciate you and Anthony and a lot of your guests.
Thank you.
So,
I appreciate you as well. Thanks for joining tonight, friend. Appreciate you very much.
Hey, take it easy.
You too.
Good
See you
night.
later. All right. Bye.
Bye.
I might take this opportunity to do this real quickly. TikTok is our intention during these live broadcasts to only provide fact-based information to the absolute best of our ability. We strive to never spread misinformation or to platform those that do. Opinions of our guests or commenters are theirs and theirs alone and do not reflect those of the hosts. Hate speech is not allowed, and we are diligent about policing it. The platform is for educational purposes only, and Anthony loves the TikTok shop. I stole your thunder.
I love the TikTok shop. And also, if my fever doesn't break, I don't think I'm going to be doing anything tomorrow.
Got you, bro.
Although I've managed
Tap
to
out.
muddle through Walt Disney Land.
Well, why don't you tap out? I got
for
you.
7.2 miles. I'm going to tap out, bro. We've got like 10 minutes left. Tap out.
Okay. All right. You're a tough guy.
Look, I just rubbed some dirt and lint on it right now.
I was going to say, remember, raised on hose water and neglect. We got this. Heidi Ho, how are you tonight?
Hi, good evening, guys. Love your live.
Thank you.
I had two things. One, a little hint to break the subject. If you tap on Fax's banner and you look right above the report flag, there's a little iridescent heart. When you tap that heart, you can watch the numbers of the likes double. So just a little FYI.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So when you see me do that, you see my name pop up on the comment section. That's what I'm doing, and you can see it rise.
Well, there you go.
So second thing, I saw yesterday in a chat, and I have not confirmed it, that Mitch McConnell's, this is way out there, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, Mitch McConnell's wife that died, or her sister died a couple of weeks ago in a car drowning. Yes.
Yeah.
That she owned the ship that hit the harbor. know anything about it. I'm asking.
I've not
Haven't heard
heard that. No.
Okay, that's another one out there on Fox. I just
Wow.
wanted y'all to know about it because it's like, that's weird.
Wow.
Yeah,
it was
I'm
a
pretty
global
sure
shipping
that's
company.
a no.
Yeah,
but
I know,
Yeah.
and I thought so too, but I've heard it more than once or twice, but I've not been able to find anything about it. So I just thought it was weird. But anyway,
Yeah,
I
that's
love
weird.
you guys.
I appreciate you, Heidi. Thank you very much.
Anthony,
Appreciate your
feel better.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Take care of your mental health. This is tough, but we got to keep going.
We do.
Yep.
Thank you, Heidi.
My son is a trumper down in Tampa. He's 42, makes a lot of money, thinks he's God. Very sad. His mother-in-law's Mexican. She thinks he made the world. So I don't know where to go from there. But
do you have a relationship with him?
oh yeah. I talked to him. We talk golf. We talk everything except. But
Okay.
I can't go down there. I can't visit Tampa. Very sad. So,
next week we're doing that live on conflict resolution, and we're going to be touching on topics like this. So if you're available, we'd love to have you, just join and listen in.
I'd
And
love
maybe
to
there's some
join.
things. Yeah, maybe there's some things that will help. Who knows?
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
You got it.
I look for y'all for hope. Everybody I can listen to because I'll be 65 in a week, and I, as optimistic as I can be, my father was a POW in World War II, and he's rolling over in his grave. God bless him.
I'm sure he is. Well, happy
And
early
I've left the
birthday
church.
from us.
Thanks. Hey, I'm glad I have another one. I'm grateful I have another one. Age has never been a problem.
We all
Thanks,
are.
guys.
Thank you, friend.
Thanks for
Appreciate
being
you
here.
very much. You got it.
Good
Have a
night.
good night. All right, bye. That's probably another conspiracy that's spinning around like crazy.
Well, now it is true that their father formed and was the CEO of the Foremost Group, which is a very large shipping conglomerate. But I'm not trying to draw parallels between this and the ship that hit the bridge. Ships were also bought and sold, so at one point in time they could have owned it. It's completely possible, but I will check.
So here's the thing. There's something referred to in media that not a lot of people know. They call it lint, L-I-N-T, like lint in your pocket. So what Fox does and other sort of these news agencies is they will find enough lint on a story to have some sort of connections that you can make to a bigger picture. So for example, her family might have connections in the shipping industry, and there may be a relationship with this shipper, and then that story will turn into her sister-in-law owned this ship. That's what lint is.
Yeah.
It's not a common known term, but for somebody who's been involved in that space for a long time, it's just one of those things that you hear about. Another piece of misinformation and conspiracy.
It's false.
Yeah, of course it is. Yep. And again, you see how easy that's how easy these things happen. That's when you pour gasoline on something like this and it turns into a full-blown wildfire in a second.
The owner of the ship is called Ocean Grace Company Private Limited out of Singapore and has absolutely no affiliation to the Foremost Group.
No, Heidi, no shade on you. We appreciate you bringing it up. That's why we can address it.
Yeah, no, this is why I did it. No, I'm thankful. First of all, does she not know that she just gave me a good time? I mean, hello. On the spot fact checking.
You got to get out more.
What?
I said you got to get out more.
Yeah. Listen, I was in Disneyland yesterday, and I walked 7.2 miles. I think that was out enough for me. Thank you.
You got the Mickey flu?
Yeah, I don't know what. It's just a head cold, but I'm a grown man in my late 50s, so that instantly makes me a grown-ass baby because this is the worst head cold ever.
And
no one's ever had a head cold like this head cold.
Sorry, Jen. So sorry, Jen. Well, on that note, then, it's been a long day for me too. Why don't we wrap? So, what'd you learn tonight, sir, and what's on your mind?
I learned tonight that we're really getting some fantastic audience participation.
Agreed.
And that I think people are starting to feel that this is a village and that you should come up with ideas because they're fantastic. We can't come up with them all by ourselves, and I would highly encourage that more, right? Like if you've got something, come up. We also learned that trolls won't come up still. I'm still willing to offer anyone a $50 DoorDash card if they can come up and prove us wrong.
Sweet. I'll match that. $100.
Yeah. I mean, well, presupposing you live in a geographic area that has DoorDash, could be Grubhub, could be whatever, or I will just send you a gift card, right?
DoorDash for me is when I send my kids to the store to go get food. Go get me some food.
Isn't that
No,
child
I'll match
labor?
that.
Isn't that breaking like a child labor law somewhere?
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. Why not?
My house, my rules. No,
Yeah.
I'll match that. And now that we
Yeah.
have new merch available, MAGA, we'll even send you some Facts merch that you can wear proudly, right? No, it's a fair point though, Anthony, and I agree. I mean, we want to be able to provide these conversations, and we feel like there's topics. You know, Anthony and I go back and forth. And we joke about it. I send him my brain dump, and he's like, "What? What the hell are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh, okay, sure, whatever, facts." But then we have these back and forth, and then we kind of pivot. But I think we
Yeah.
try to be relevant to what's happening. But also, I want this space to turn into conversations that we all want to have. We joke about Facts After Dark, but we uncovered a lot of stuff the first time we did it. We're going to do Are You Okay again? We talk about education. We're going to do conflict resolution. We talk about gun violence. I mean, these are topics that we all should be discussing. And our hope is because we know that the right doesn't get a lot of the information that we share objectively, that maybe it will matter to someone. But I think it's important. We still enjoy doing it. And as long as you guys are willing to continue to come back, we'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, my brother, feel better. Thank you, mods. Everybody, really appreciate you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. It's Friday night. You know, again, just thinking ahead to next week real quick. Next Wednesday night, the 10th. Is that the 10th? Yes, the 10th. We'll be doing that conflict resolution. Rev Bishop will be joining us. It's his sweet spot. We might have a special guest. Hopefully, we'll see. The next Friday night, we'll go back to Are You Okay again? And then depending on how things go, we've got some other plans. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention that book is called, hold on, I wrote it down. Where did I write it? I lost it. Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning. Ordinary Men. Somebody asked about that. And thank you for those suggestions tonight, everybody. So more the better. We're going to be talking now. We're going to make some parallels between WW2 and today, and in the Mustache Man and Yahtzee Germany with MAGA, because I think there are some obvious lines that we can draw, because we're not going to allow this to repeat itself, and we'll do everything we can. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Please vote blue. See you tomorrow, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Bye, friends.